Hello, everybody. We are finally back. And tonight, as you can see, we'll be covering Konami's Famicom imports. A lot of the unusual, sometimes weird, games that never made it out of Japan, and some that should have made it out of Japan and just never did for whatever reason, whether it was, extra chips or whatever. But before we get into that, as always tonight, with me is Mike, my co-host.
I'm the Penguin.
Yes, you are. By the way,
You picked the goofiest possible sprite for that, and I love it.
Betty says now when she's putting these backgrounds together, she knows which one you are just by looking at the sprite.
Oh, jeez. That's actually flattering. That's actually adorable. I appreciate that.
And returning to the roundtables for the first time in a long time, we're going back almost to the very beginning here, is Eugene.
It's me. Hello, everyone.
Glad you
I'm
made it.
disappointed that Mike didn't do a Batman Penguin impression when he's like, "I'm the Penguin."
Well, now you put me on the spot.
Yeah, go ahead, Mike.
Well, Batman, you think you could stop this criminal caper? Well, I don't. God damn it! I can't improvise for shit. I'm sorry.
Not good enough.
I need a
F minus.
Yeah,
like a Burgess Meredith outtake.
Yep.
Yeah, that's my Penguin. Okay.
Yep.
Bird.
And also joining us tonight, back from the Castlevania stream we did, is Jose, Omega Ace Gaming.
Hello. That's all I got.
All right.
It's not even that late for you, Ace. Come on.
Right.
Well, glad you could both make it here tonight because, well, we all know how much we enjoy these weird, bizarre games that never made it out of Japan.
Mm-hmm.
And some of the not-so-weird ones that also never made it out of Japan. And so on and so forth. You guys get it. So that said, who's in the chat tonight?
Well, we've got Timothy Applegate. Hello. Timothy's a big Famicom fan. He comes to a lot of my streams.
Excellent.
And was just hanging out the other night when I was playing some Konami Famicom exclusive games.
That's right. I remember seeing him in the stream. So how are you doing tonight, Timothy? Oh, I see who else is here.
LVP is here. Logan Diener
Here's
Productions.
Hey there. What's up?
What's up, Logan?
Many pen names. Sometimes he switches it up. What some of his other ones was like something like Logan Dinner Productions or something, or
Logan Dinner Productions. Now that's something.
Yeah.
Oh, well, let's see. So, does anyone want to kick it off with a particular game?
Ooh, why don't we start with Goonies? Yeah, Goonies. Why not? Goonies, the first Goonies game for the NES or the Famicom,
we did
rather.
Get it in the West in the Play Choice 10.
That's
Yes,
true.
we did.
We sure
Such a
did.
weird anomaly.
you know what? I never saw it, so it never existed. I was one of those kids who's just like, why is it Goonies 2? Where's the first one?
That's your story, and you're sticking to it, right?
Absolutely.
I wonder who would have played Annie the Mermaid if there was an actual Goonies 2 movie, but
Aileen Quinn?
maybe Jennifer Connelly? I don't know.
I don't know. I was thinking Aileen Quinn because she played Annie and Annie.
Well, cute.
I can say I actually did stumble across Goonies in the Play Choice 10 once. It's like, my parents had actually, they'd taken my younger brother and I, we'd gone out to like hit some church rummage sale somewhere and got some neat stuff. But before I go any further, hi Bruno, and you're wrong as usual.
I mean, we're not even talking about the Genesis, man. You can certainly say your wrong opinion, but at least be on point.
Exactly. Well, anyway, we'd stopped to get some lunch somewhere, and I remember going up and looking at an arcade game there. And I'm looking at it, it's like, the Goonies? Wow, I've never seen this before. And so I, got a quarter, started playing it. It's like, what's with all the rats? Had no idea what the hell I was doing. And I didn't see
There
it.
probably should have been more rats in the movie, come to think about it. Like Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade got it right with all the rats. There needed to
Exactly.
be more rats underground.
I
Yeah.
do like rats. I don't like how they're usually demonized in film, but it is what it is.
Rats. But yeah, I didn't even make it past the first part that we're seeing here in the background. Which, of course, as you all probably know, Betty did do the background for us.
Yay, Betty!
There you go.
And it's
Nice
a good one
work.
as usual.
She makes us look good, which is highly appreciated.
Yes, she does.
Oh yeah.
So, but yeah, and I remember going to video stores after that looking for Goonies and only finding Goonies 2. And it's like, where's this Goonies game? I saw it. I know it's for Nintendo. It has to be. And then just nothing for years and years.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I had always assumed that they had just like decided to make, because obviously there was the movie Goonies, they decided to make the video game a like fake sequel to the movie, which would be kind of an interesting approach.
Yeah.
But obviously that's not really what they did.
Nope, turned out to be a sequel to the game.
So you have finished it,
Oh yes.
right? Since then, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah, finished both of them actually a long time ago. I haven't played.
nice.
I haven't finished the second one yet because it's going to be a project. Because I don't want to use a walkthrough, right? So it's going to be a project. So the thing I really liked about Goonies, which I played through a few years ago, is just that it is all of the stuff that I enjoyed from the second game. I think it plays really well. Like I like the aesthetic, I like the music, all that stuff. But it's just like more straightforward. Not entirely straightforward because stuff is like hidden in weird places. It's like one of those games, one of those weird games where you have to like jump in the middle and there's like something in midair someplace that you need that just like magically appears there, and you just have to know that it's there. And things I guess shuffle around a little bit too. So it is kind of a mysterious game, but it's not quite as confusing as like having a front and a back and like doors leading to like weird places.
Yeah, or like you go through a door and there's an Eskimo standing there.
Right, you don't have to punch things, like you don't need. Goonies 2 sounds very ambitious, like and it's interesting that they took it in like such a complicated direction, I think, coming from the first game.
Yeah. Oh, Wolf is here.
How
you doing, Wolf?
I will.
Hey, Wolf.
I mean, the first game is primarily an action game, but like each stage is technically non-linear, kind of, sorta. I mean, the first stage is really just like a couple of screens in one big interconnected room, but it gets more elaborate for each new level. It's like each new stage is sort of like a mini Metroid segment, if that's a just comparison, or I'm sure there's a better comparison than to just jump to the Metroid
Well, it's definitely an exploration game, right? Like you have to go and you have to find the keys, right, to open the exit. And you can find the different power-ups that can help you out. And I know in like the playthrough that I have on my site, like I think I took a warp. So you can actually like skip sections too. Like I just took a warp out of Mario to shorten the playthrough, which is, I mean, there's a lot more depth to it if you're looking at it. Because if you look at it and you're like, well, it's a straightforward like linear game. It's not really that. But it's definitely not a full-blown Metroidvania, and it's definitely not on the same level as Goonies 2. I think it's worth playing. I think everyone should play it. I think it's fun.
Yeah, I think it is.
Hear the music.
Yeah, I think it is actually a pretty solid and underrated action title. Like you said, it does have some layers of complexity to it, but it's not overwhelming like arguably Goonies 2 can be sometimes.
Yeah.
You know what you have to do basically, and that's just go into as many doors as you can, find the captured Goonie after you bomb a door, and then reach the exit. And that is mostly the premise. It just sticks to as you go on through the levels, which the last one ending on One-Eyed Willie's ship, I think, is a decent touch. And I can't really think of many criticisms on the game except that Mike's only attack is pretty short range, and that is
the constantly respawning enemies.
Oh yeah, no, that's a fair point.
That's true.
There's a very short respawn period.
I mean, I guess it's like that so that you potentially don't run out of bombs, but nonetheless, they do maybe feel a little overbearing and stifling at times.
But at least he doesn't take fall damage, which
is true.
Yeah, if Mikey was Spelunker, this game would be over.
Yeah,
exactly.
it's interesting that it was a Nintendo Versus game because it does play like an arcade game. Like it feels it feels very black box. Like even looking at the screenshot, like it looks like a black box like NES arcade game. But with a little extra complexity to it.
It would have actually fit in well with Konami's first wave of releases. Like, cause, you had Gradius, Russian Attack, Castlevania, and it would have made sense.
For playthrough when you know what you're doing.
Yeah, I do fail to understand why they didn't actually pick it up to release over here because the Goonies was pretty popular. The movie was, so it just kind of seems like a logical thing, but nope.
And for them to also then, like when they brought over the sequel, like there are other games that have come over that we didn't get the first game, or vice versa, where they just changed the numbering. So why didn't they just call Goonies 2 Goonies?
Good
when
question.
They brought it here, we didn't have Goonies it just raises questions.
Yeah, lots of questions.
I mean, you expect Konami to ever be consistent with anything. I mean, the reason why we're talking about them in the first place is because, fantastic goddamn developers though they were in the 20th century, I'd, like to make that known. Their thoughts on what they believed would fly in the West were what would and wouldn't fly in the West were a little arbitrary, and I'm not sure if they've withheld the most games over in Japan out of every other developer, but the ratio of quality games that we did and did not get from them is kind of frustrating. So that's why we're addressing them here, I think, tonight. So,
hey, Retro Ryan's here.
Hi, Ryan.
Yeah, thanks for coming in. And there's Sharon.
Hey, Sharon.
Hey, Retro Ryan.
I've only recently experienced Goonies myself, both in game and movie. In the last few years.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I was pleasantly surprised by the game. I saw it. The seller J4U, the eBay seller. They had the copy of the game for just a couple bucks. So I said, why not? I'm already having all this other stuff shipped to me, and I popped the cartridge in. It was a simple, short game, only 6 stages. The music that stands out in a nice way. It's only maybe 1 or 2 songs in the entirety of the game.
Yeah, but they're good.
One of those songs being a fantastic 8-bit rendition of Cyndi Lauper's specialized theme song for the movie Goonies Are Good Enough. With, if I'm not mistaken, the music video featured Captain Lou Albano, like Girls Want to Have Fun, but I think it also had Rowdy Roddy Piper in it, unless my memory's
the video for the Goonies, the song Goonies Are Good Enough, that was a really interesting thing because it was actually 2 parts. It featured the majority of the WWF superstars at the time, minus like Hulk Hogan. I mean, Andre the Giant was there, Rowdy Roddy Piper, Iron Sheik, Nikolai Volkov. So, and it basically was like a condensed version of the movie. Steven Spielberg even appeared at one point.
Wow.
Yeah. If you have access to the DVD or the Blu-ray, it's on there as a bonus feature. And Prime is here.
Yo, Prime, what's up, man?
Yeah, a lot of people, may already be aware that the original Castlevania only had 2 composers, and one of those 2 composers was actually the person who, pulled together the music for the Goonies game. So I thought that was interesting and worthy of mention.
Mm-hmm.
Very nice.
Yeah, it is. It's just an excellent little game. And were you aware it was actually one of the ones that was also released on the Famicom Disk System as well?
Yeah, What was it? I think it was a. No, you're right. Yeah, it was. It had a manual and everything. It wasn't just the write-only title. It was the full-blown physical release. Yeah.
Yep, one of the few. But it's just a shame we never got it.
Yeah.
I mean, we did not on the NES at least. Again, Play Choice 10, but like.
Yeah, but
yeah, I don't know why we didn't either, but you know, it is. If not the best game we're going to talk about tonight, it is certainly a worthy gem touching upon.
Yeah. It's a good icebreaker, you know.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So
although I'm wondering, sorry, Rob, did you?
I'm curious as to what you're wondering.
It reminds me to transition off of this. Mikey was one of several protagonists featured in Konami YY World.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
This is true.
Which, you know, many years before the Avengers, this is like the Avengers of Konami. I'm going to get a punch for that, I know.
Well, we could punch you if we wanted to.
Oh my god.
We could, but we're not. Instead, we're just going to do this.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, sir. May I have another?
I can do this all day.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
Nice.
But speaking of the Avengers and crossovers and whatnot, you know, I'm not 100% sure, but I think that YY World was the original video game crossover game.
I gave it some thought, not a lot of thought, but like nothing else jumps to mind. So I'd be very curious if anybody in the chat can think of anything that predates, 1988 was YY World?
Yeah, something like 87, 88, somewhere around there.
Yeah, if anybody can think of any other video game crossovers like that, that predated that, I'd be very, very curious. I mean, it's so early on in really video game history anyway that there wouldn't be much precedent.
No, I mean, it's not like Namco released, Namco crossover starring Pac-Man, Dig Dug, and the fighter plane from Galaga.
It does feel like something that they did eventually, but I can't remember if or when.
Well, I know right now, actually, I guess it's probably down now, but when they had Pac-Man 99 going on the Switch, you could get different skins for the game, including stuff like Tower of Draga, and I think there was a Wonpaka Graffiti skin? There was a bunch of stuff from their old games.
There was definitely Wonpaka Graffiti skin. Got a nice screenshot of it on West Mansion, actually.
Oh, nice.
Oh, very cool. So I wouldn't necessarily call that a crossover, but things where they take all these different properties and pull them together. I mean, the Proteus Dog games, they do that as well.
Yep. And it's like just you run the roster here. I mean, there's something representing every major Konami game up to that point, as far as like their mid-'80s franchises. It's like just you've got Castlevania, you've got what else is there? Getsu Fumaden, you've got there's a Contra stage. You fly the Vic Viper or the Twin Bee at one point.
There wasn't a Contra stage in the first YY World. At least, well,
a stage.
The final stage was kind of Contra-ish, and I think it in fact had the music from the Alien Lair, but Bill or Lance didn't appear in it.
No, you didn't play as one of the characters, but at least the series was represented in some way.
Yeah, at least.
So, and so you got Mikey from the Goonies, you got King Kong from King Kong 2.
Uh-huh.
And Gomon.
Mm-hmm.
And I know there's one I'm missing. It's a big
giant Moai head.
Oh yeah. Yes. So and
Pentaro.
Yep, Pentaro, of course. Plus,
I think I'm not sure Pentaro was in the original version. Thing of it is, I know like
he operates the transporter.
Oh, my bad.
So he's not actually playable. And then they introduce Konami Man and Konami Lady.
Yep. That was her first game, at least as playable characters. And I think it might have been their only game as playable characters. Pretty sure you can't play them in the sequel.
No, ironically not. And yeah, I guess you're right. They were never playable again. Poor bastards.
But Konami, man, sure loves showing up in other games just to like distract you from stuff.
Yeah, good old distraction,
As I
man.
discovered the other night. It's like, what was that? Look up in the sky. It was like, oh, it's Konami, and I'm dead. Thanks, Konami, man. You suck.
Distraction man.
Exactly. But for such an ambitious title, though, it definitely had its problems.
Yeah, game's hard, pretty unforgiving, as I recall. If you die, the only Konami man, Konami girl would resurrect, and like the other heroes would remain dead unless he like paid some sort of currency to bring them back, and you know, it was a pretty penny, as I recall, too. So.
Oh my gosh, I didn't even get that far because I only played a little while the other night, and I didn't even manage to rescue anybody.
Oh dag.
But
yeah, you got pretty slaughtered.
It was tough.
Yeah,
it is definitely.
Putting the, I mean, like, yeah, enemies, as I recall, just seem to take way too punishment, even the basic ones, and most characters, I think, have pretty short attack ranges. You can fire projectiles, but it costs some sort of sub-weapon energy. In fact, it might be the same as your currency. Honestly, my memories are a little fuzzy, but it's those, like, old-school-ass systems that doesn't give you really a lot of leeway and can get grindy if you're on the downside of it. But the biggest structural complaint that I have is you're ostensibly given 6 stages to explore, like it's Mega Man, except that is a lie. You really can only go to the Castlevania stage and beat that one. All others have some sort of gate that you need a character's specific ability to get around, and there's pretty much a predetermined order that makes me wonder what the point of having the stages being selectable is. Why didn't they just make this a more linear action game? So
to give you the illusion of free will.
Oh, so Konami picked up in that bullshit years before Mass Effect. I get it.
Yeah, I mean, I played a ROM hack translation of it, and so I discovered that you can actually, like, they give you clues about, like, which stage you're supposed to go to first.
I see.
But, I mean, you know, that's not too different from some other games. Like, you look at something like 8 Eyes, and, you know, there's, like, a very specific order of stages that you're meant to tackle it in. But for the life of me, I can't figure out how you fight Dracula with like a short range weapon, like your fist and I don't know how you do that. Like I didn't get to try it too much, but I'm just like, I don't know, I need a whip or something.
As I recall, he's not even a boss.
No, he is.
I didn't think he was. I didn't think he was a boss, but
no, he's simply just a unique enemy, I guess. The boss is this weird, like, large one-eyed toad monster that I don't recall ever being in any of the Castlevania games, unless this was something that I was mandalaed into the games that I don't remember, but I don't think that's the case. So
I need to see Jose do a Castlevania Bestiary video about that thing.
Yeah.
I might.
Yeah, please do.
That would be interesting.
Yeah. DM me a reminder. I could try to set some time aside and knock one out.
Okay. I mean, not that you don't have enough on your plate right now, you know, as it is. If you guys aren't aware, like, I'd say that aside from Rob, like, Jose is our resident Castlevania expert, and he does these great YouTube shorts about the Castlevania Bestiary, where he highlights a different enemy from the series, and he goes, like, all in on these things with, like, really detailed lore about them. He goes into real world inspirations and things like that. So I'd like to see what he comes up with on this one-eyed toad from YY World.
Yeah, thank you.
I have to go back and check some of those acts. I'm not even sure if I was aware of them or not.
Oh yeah, they're under the shorts. I think I have maybe 17 so far, something like that.
Yeah, and they're like a couple minutes long, so he packs a lot into them.
Cool.
Oh yeah.
I know that when it comes to Castlevania and myself, I pretty much kind of run the whole old school vampire killing jam series part of it. Anything past that, if you want to call it a Metroidvania, you can. That's more Mike's department.
Yeah, I suppose. Although you, I mean, it's not that I'm lacking knowledge in the classic Vanias myself either.
Oh, you got plenty of that, yeah.
Yeah. To be fair, though, you do at least still like Symphony of the Night, and
yeah, that was kind of my cutoff point.
At the risk of being a nostalgic fuddy-duddy, I know that it's certainly got quite a few structural problems, but, it's still probably my favorite of the Metroidvanias, even if Aria of Sorrow might technically be better, but that's straying a little far away from the subject in question, I realize.
I'll say it has structural problems. The castle can't even stay right side up.
Well, a fair double joke there, because the inverted castle kind of sucks, but...
well, that point to Eugene.
But yeah, going back to WiiWare World, I guess it's not surprising that game didn't make it to the States, because most of the games that are referenced in it also didn't make it to the United States.
At least half
or
of them
outside of
didn't.
Japan, rather.
Yeah, we didn't get a Goemon title in the West until Legend of the Mystical Ninja somehow made it over here on the SNES. Getsu Fumaden, of course, we never got, and King Kong 2 Akari no Mega Punch was also a no-show. That one,
I guess we technically did get Getsu Fumaden like within the last few years.
It took forever,
but
yeah.
They released it with the remake or the reboot or whatever they want to call it.
Oh yeah, well, shit. Right.
Wasn't it a limited thing though, or some kind of bonus?
No, you can still get it. You can still get it on. I think it came for free as a limited pack-in with it in early access, but you can still buy it as like an add-on now. The thing is, it's not translated, right? I mean, Jose is also knows more about Getsu Fumaden than I do, but I think they've only translated like the menus and stuff like that, which isn't entirely that helpful.
God, I don't think they did even that. they just threw the ROM on there and said, "All right, here you go, guys, figure it out."
Yeah, we're gonna have to discuss that one in a bit. But since we're already talking about WiiWire World, it makes sense to jump into 2.
Mm-hmm.
So, one last note about WiiWire World. As usual, the music is fantastic.
Yep.
Yes.
But then,
I mean,
go ahead.
A fair deal of it is, ported over from the games that they're from, but, Konami on the NES almost always had on-point music, so, why fix what ain't broken?
Yeah, exactly.
Does that one have any special, like, fancy, like, sound chip, or is it just a standard?
Pretty sure it's a standard one.
Yeah.
But now 2, they just went and changed things around quite a bit. It's like instead of picking from different stages to start in, it's more linear, and it doesn't feature Konami Man or Konami Girl as playable characters. And instead, you play as, what is he, a cyborg or something named Riku?
Yeah, or like some sort of Sentai hero that's a mech suit. I forget exactly, but he's adorable.
But yeah, so they threw some auto-scrolling sequences in, and then they got your regular platforming sequences, and they do bring back the shooter stages too. But there's also other things too later on. I think you actually play a recreation of Frogger at one point. So
wow.
Yeah, there's little stuff like that.
That's really interesting too, because they never actually did an NES port of Frogger, at least back on the console.
Nope. And that's true. That's actually something that bugs me. A lot of their early arcade games, which they've been really nice on the Famicom, nothing. It's like no Time Pilot, no Rock and Rope, no. What's the other one I'm thinking of? Shaolin Road.
Guts.
Guts, exactly.
I'm surprised they didn't have like a Zapper stage in there, since Konami loved to mix up all those different play styles.
Yeah, I don't think they did.
Oh yeah.
But this, of course, the big change, you can actually choose which heroes you want at the beginning. And you've got...
Yeah, that's a big plus, yeah.
Yeah. And I think they're
it's
a little...
kind of like choosing. It's kind of like when you're choosing your options in like the Gradius games.
Exactly. And it's a much better lineup of heroes this time too, I think.
Yeah, as I recall, Goemon, Simon, and Fuma returned from the first game, and now we actually do have Bill from Contra, and Oop Baby, who I'm sure we'll be discussing later also.
Oh yeah, we gotta talk about Upa.
Oh yes.
Yeah, Sharon asked, by the way, is YY World beatable?
Yeah, it's beatable. Yeah. It's just...
It is. It's just kind of a structural pain in the ass, and definitely playing it in Japanese doesn't help, although the translation I remember of it was pretty imperfect and had some unnecessary profanity laced in there, but such was the time. So, yeah, I don't know what to tell you there.
Well, I can say that 2 is definitely far more beatable than the first one is.
Yeah, it is more accessible and by far a more fun game. I am glad to finally have a Contra stage in here where the boss, as I believe, is a xenomorphy-looking alien who rides in some sort of flying motor scooter, which is pretty great.
I remember that.
What does YY World actually mean?
Oh, I learned this at some point, but now I don't remember what exactly.
Yeah, I don't recall off the top of my head either.
Let me check.
While he's doing that, though, I gotta say, Eugene, your reaction to seeing Upa when you played him, that was great.
I love Upa.
He's a little guy. YY apparently is a Japanese onomatopoeia for a noisy, crowded area. So I guess that just means that we have these cluster of heroes all in the room together. It's a loose association, but I'll take it, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, for as much as I do think YY World 2 is an absolute improvement on the first game, I do have to admit, I dislike its first stage, which for some reason is auto-scrolling, and it auto-scrolls pretty damn slowly. And I'm just kind of champing at the bit because this stage is overall pretty easy, and I just want to move on to the next one at my own damn pace already.
That's why they made it an auto-scroller. They were like, "Wait, this is too easy. How do we make this harder?"
Well, it's not like a bullshit auto-scrolling stage in Super Mario Brothers 3. It's just
it's soft.
Oh yeah, fair. Now the auto-scrolling doesn't make it more challenging. It just makes it more tedious. So I really don't get why it's like that. And then all of the stages, not counting the shmup stages afterward, completely ditch it, and it's a much better game after. So if you can get over that initial hurdle, then the game does become a lot better almost instantly. So.
Yep. And Rex has joined us in the chat.
Hey, Rex.
Yeah, it's off-putting because you start out the game and you're like, oh, it's an auto-scroller. I don't want this. Like, who would want this? And so you may never give it more of a chance beyond that. And I'm sorry, right now I'm having flashbacks to Kid Dracula, which we'll get to later on as well. Those freaking auto-scrollers.
Oh boy. Oh. But it's still a fun game. It's definitely worth playing. And
they're not expensive.
No, not in the slightest.
I guess the first one's a little bit more expensive than the second one, but they're still pretty affordable.
Yeah. And from there, let's take a moment and appreciate the background that Betty did for us. You can't see it under the chat there, but there's something from the Famicom Disk System game Amada no Kiseki. Or Konami's Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. And, of course, you have the hideout stage from the Goonies, stage 1 with the rats. Mike is Pentaro from Yume Penguin Monogatari. looking very shocked and blubbery.
It's the Fat Penguin game, Charlie Brown.
Yep. Yeah. Eugene's actually Tetsuan Atom. One of the rare licensed games they did early on.
AKA Astro Boy.
Thank you. And obviously I'm the Big Viper. In this case, it's from Gradius too, because I never made it across the Pacific. But I kind of want to talk about the game that is representing Jose next.
Okay.
I just sat down and gave it I think a decent try today, and it's confusing, but it's fun.
Oh yeah.
And what's the title of this? I can't ever.
Eugene da Baba.
Thank you.
Right.
I forget what the English name for that is, but
it's like Temple Labyrinth the Baba. The Baba's the name of the demon.
Okay, well,
Hopping Monk Adventure.
Yeah.
Pajama Man.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
There you go, Pajama Man. So, Jose, since you played this one extensively, you want to talk a little bit about it?
Yeah. Oh man, it's a ton of fun. Although tapping the fire button gets old pretty fast, so a turbo controller is definitely recommended. Maybe use the Hudson Joy card. That way, people judge you a little less harshly for using a somewhat official controller. It's riddled with all sorts of secret items that are just scattered all over the levels. You're supposed to fire into pillars and just random objects, and in some cases there are stages that you can't advance in unless you do that. There's even one particular stage that you won't be able to beat unless you jump into a waterfall that looks like it's part of the stage's background, but it's actually intended for you to progress.
That is such a cliche. There's always something hidden in the damn waterfall.
Go behind the waterfall. Even my son knows that one.
Yeah.
Nice.
I can imagine.
So there are instances where if you take the regular exit, the game actually sends you backwards. You end up going back to the beginning of said world.
That is cruel bullshit.
That's evil.
That is.
And so fair warning.
People said Simon's Quest was cryptic and bizarre. That just sounds even worse.
I mean, it is, but I don't know. It's been a while since I played Da Baba myself, and I remember really enjoying it, but I can't recall if I've actually ever beaten it. That'll definitely be something for the marker to do if I haven't.
I feel like you'd
yet,
probably
but...
really remember. I think from what I saw of Jose's playthrough, like you really earn it. And I think when you beat that game, you would feel like a sense of accomplishment that you would never forget.
Mm-hmm. Tell me it at least has a good ending.
Yeah.
So it's not just like, congratulations, the end.
No,
you actually rescue the girl, the damsel in distress, and she gives him a kiss, I want to say, in the cheek, and you actually see an animation of his entire face flushing red. Which is really funny.
Yeah, that is cute, yeah.
Yeah,
Nice.
it's definitely worth the ending. It's a lot of fun.
2 points about this game, since Jose mentioned the turbo controller, and I sort of faux gasped because it's like, oh my god, cheating. This was a Famicom Disk System game, right? So this one only came out on a disc. And also, then thinking ahead into the future of the Famicom, the Sharp Twin Famicom, there was at least one console version of that included turbo on the controllers. So that wouldn't be cheating, for sure.
That's true.
No cheating detected. But I think I made it to stage 1-2, and that was as far as I got.
Oh man, I know the checkpoints are like at the start of each numerical, so it's like stage 0, and then 1, 1, 1, 2, 1, 3, 1. Once you make it to those, you're locked in. You're good.
Ah, okay.
And you save progress, and it's like unlimited continues, right?
Yeah, I think until the last world has limited continues, and then it sends you back one world or something. I vaguely remember that, but I mean, once you get the patterns down and you know what you're doing, it's not too daunting. It's not too scary. You just run back to where you were before. It kind of almost becomes like a quick sprint back to where you left off. So it's not that bad.
Well,
Go ahead.
I was gonna say I got to this point where, before I had to quit because of what was, I had to go take care of some other stuff. But there's this one point where it's like these 5 tiles on the ground, and they keep cracking every time you jump on them.
Mm-hmm.
And I fell into the water more than I should have.
Congratulations.
Yep. Splash. So, well, what's the point? I managed to break down all the way through one of the tiles. And so you're supposed to uncover all what's underneath them, or what's the deal there?
Yeah. Some of them actually have switches that.
Right?
Yeah, you're actually required to jump repeatedly on some of those blocks to reveal switches, because if you don't flip all the switches, you don't get to progress in the level.
Ah, okay. And hey, look, Snarb is here.
Hey, Snarb, what up? And you are seeing the Goonies on the thing. That is true.
Sorry, when I see Snarb, I think of Snarf, and so everyone goes, Snarb, Snarb.
Well,
I'm sure he appreciates that.
Depends on how much you like Snarf, I guess. Anyway. So, anything else you want to add about that one at all?
I do like its how it has a movement scheme similar to Star Tropics, but even more pronounced. Like, the hopping movement, I think, is really the core of the game's thrust. If it had less restrictive movement, I don't think it would be as memorable, which is also why I like the first Star Tropics more than its sequel, but it's just a pretty neat premise, and one of the more innovative action games on the system, and definitely one that I would have liked to seen over here.
Mm-hmm.
But I do understand that it's maybe too mystically Japanese for a Western audience to be viable. I don't know. That's the best way I can put it.
Yeah, they could have done a facelift on it or something, though.
Yeah, it's like, I don't know. It makes your bald monk into some, like, blonde action hero or whatever, and you're hopping through, like, Hollywood movie sets or some bullshit like that.
Or they could have...
Well,
think about
kind of like what they did for the arcade game Mikey, whatever that was originally.
Mm-hmm. They could also pull the Totally Rad on it.
Yeah. Good old Magic John.
All right. You sound like you had something else you wanted to say, Jose.
Oh yeah, the game has really cool bosses that break the monotony of the gameplay. So that's worth mentioning. There's also there are some stages that, like, there's one that actually collapses from the left side of the screen to the right, so there's a sense of urgency in some of the stages. And there's even a hidden area right before the final boss that lets you stock up on power-ups and stuff like that, so you can take them on and actually stand a chance. Because without that, it's a very big up. It's already an uphill battle against the final boss, but that makes it that much harder if you don't do that.
That's like Super Castlevania 4, isn't it?
Kind of, sort of.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite. Just to wrap up what I'm saying, it's one of my favorite Disk System games. Like, it's as far as exclusives go, I put it in the top 3. So if you haven't given that game an honest try, then you really need to.
I should sink more time into it then.
Same. Oh, yeah. I want to make sure that I actually beat it and remember beating it this time.
I'm sort of the same way. Like, I had Kabuki Quantum Fighter, a totally different publisher, as a kid, but I don't remember beating it, and I feel like I would remember if I'd beaten it, so I have to assume that I didn't.
Yeah, that's the same boat I'm in, so I'm counting this one as a not yet.
Well,
looking at the box art for or get the disc art, I guess, for Make Eugene and Baba, and that is wild. It looks really cool.
I remember reading about the game actually originally in the Hardcore Gaming 101 guide to the Famicom Disk System. I mean, I think I'd seen passing reference to it, but I never really played it. And then I saw that, and it's like, well, that looks intriguing, and then I forgot about it.
Wah, wah.
What can I say? There's a lot out there, and only so much time to play it all.
Yeah, pretty much.
So, Eugene, you want to pick the next one we're going to talk about?
Oh gosh, you know what? Let's just because it's easy and I can talk about it a little bit. We can talk about Tetsuwan Atom.
That's a good idea.
My icon there. So obviously, this is, I believe, the first Astro Boy game. that was released. Actually, Konami, I don't believe actually developed the game. I think they only published the game. I think someone else developed it. And to some extent it shows, because it doesn't really feel like a Konami game, I would say. And for whatever reason, I'm like really fascinated with it. It is, I think there are like 8 or 9 levels. I've only made it maybe halfway through the game. And that is because there's no translation of it. And Japanese, I think, would help you. Being able to read Japanese would help you understand some of the gameplay, but it's also the sort of game where you just don't really know what you're supposed to do. Like,
Yes.
and every stage is different. So the basic attacks, like Tetsuan Adam can run, he can punch things, and he can jump on things, which you wouldn't expect. It took me a long time to figure out that he doesn't actually take damage by like. Some enemies will not damage him by touching them. Other enemies will. Some enemies he can jump on and hurt them. Other ones he can't. Like it's just like a trial and error kind of thing. He also has the ability, if he jumps 3 times, he can then like launch himself into the air and fly for a short period of time. Like, so you're collecting energy throughout the game, and you're constantly running out of energy as the clock runs down. And every time you take damage and then kind of come back, like with your next life, you come back with less energy until finally you have no more energy to really respawn. And then I think you get 1 continue, which also requires energy, or you have as many continues as you have energy stored up. So it's a very punishing sort of game because it requires so much trial and error, when the error causes you to have to restart from the very beginning, more often than not. And the first stage is sort of linear, like you just go from left to right and you have to make it to the end of the game. But that has one of the coolest moments in one of these old games for me, is that the transition from stage 1 to stage 2, you take flight at the end of the stage, and then you fly across the ocean, and the sun actually like rises while you're doing that, and then you land and you're in stage 2. There's no like transition other than that. If you continue after dying, then it starts off like stage 2 or whatever. But then you're in stage 2 and you're like, what the heck do I do? And there's all this stuff that you can collect in the stage that you think you need in order to unlock the exit. But it turns out you don't actually need any of it, as far as I can tell, because you can just punch this thing above the gate at the end and it'll open the door and you can go through. So I'm not really sure like why all that other stuff is in there. And I've kind of cobbled together my understanding of the game from trying to play through it and understand it, trying to do Google Translate with my phone, trying to do Google Translate on like a manual, and occasionally dipping into one of the walkthroughs that you can find online. I haven't watched any videos because, again, I'm just, for some reason, I really want to try to figure this game out. And then you're in the 3rd stage, and there's this interesting puzzle that you need to progress. If you keep going from left to right, you will never get anywhere. The stage just keeps repeating. But there's periodically these bells, and each bell rings at a different tone. And when you attack an enemy, the game will play a series of tones, and you have to recreate that music with the bells in order to unlock the next area of the stage. It is so weird.
That is.
And very tricky, because I'm very musically challenged. Like I cannot hear tones properly. I cannot hear rhythm properly. It is embarrassment to my wife and her entire family, because they are all very musical. And so usually I have to just like wait until, if you keep punching the enemies, they give you different tones. So I keep punching the enemies until I get a tone that's like 1 bell 4 times, because it's like I can do that, you know. And then the 4th stage is where I'm stuck, because I have no idea what to do now. And you run through the stage, and there's all these people that talk to you, and they tell you stuff, but I can't tell what they're saying. So that's kind of where I'm stuck. But I'm just like, I'm very charmed by it for some reason, even though it's very difficult. And the music is pretty good. Like, it has a nice rendition of like the old Astro Boy theme song. I like Astro Boy. I like the iterations of it that I've seen. So I've been just kind of like poking at it. It feels to me like one of those quintessential Japanese import games that you have no manual for, you don't understand the language, and yet you still want to try to get, you know, as far as you can.
Yep, I've had those experiences before. I remember I owned it for a while, couldn't do jack, and it eventually got rid of it in one of my purges.
Yeah, Eugene, that's a pretty spirited defense of what I think is a bad game. I'm sorry to put you down immediately like that. I don't mean
I didn't make the game. I also tend to have a little bit more patience for Kusoge, or games that people traditionally think are bad. I think that most quote bad games, including probably most of what made AVGN's career, there's usually something redeeming about them, and there's something ambitious. Like some of those games exceed their ambition, sometimes by quite a bit. And I like to focus on what they were trying to do within the limitations of the platform and time and budget and whatever. And as long as I'm having fun with it, it's fine.
That's the important thing.
Yeah, that's a very respectable position, although I have to wonder now what you think of Zombie Nation, which isn't...
I actually do not like Zombie Nation.
Oh, come on, man. You say all that when you put down my favorite game.
But it's a pure gameplay thing. I don't think it's necessarily a bad game. I just don't like it. I just don't enjoy it. I haven't gotten very far in it. I recently picked it up on the Switch, actually, just the digital version of it. It's just it's weird. I like the weirdness of it. All right, that's a whole other discussion. I like the weirdness of it, but I just don't particularly have fun with it.
Yeah, it's mechanically not great. I mostly like it just for how goofy it is. So, but anyway, I don't really have much else to say about this game except for how little I attempted to play it. I didn't get very far. Just trying to figure out the very specific method for flight. Is you had to do some sort of specifically timed triple jump. If my memories,
you have to jump 3 times, but it has to be in one direction, so you can't just hop back and forth. You have to jump 3 times in. It's kind of like trying to do that weird that somersault move that Mario does in some of the later Super Mario games.
Yes.
Where each third jump is the one that lets you do the somersault.
Mm-hmm. Well, that makes sense then. It's I did not gel with it, but I am glad that you did, and it deserves at least plaudits for being what I assume was a relatively scarce game based on a classic anime series.
Yeah, they didn't make a lot of those back then. At least, not ones that had also been released in America. We never had a classic Speed Racer game or anything like that,
Mm-hmm. That's a good point. This may be apocryphal, but ostensibly Capcom attempted to make their own Astro Boy, but couldn't secure the rights for it, so that's more or less how we got Mega Man.
That's interesting.
So I've heard. I forget how true this is, honestly, but that was something I recall at some point.
Yeah. How about you, Jose? Have you ever played this one?
No, unfortunately, I don't have a whole lot of experience with it, and I know very little about Astro Boy in general, so I don't really have much to say to add to that.
Unfortunately, I don't recall much of Astro Boy either, except for that one GBA game that Treasure made, which is very surprisingly good.
That's a very good game. I don't think I ever... I don't know if I finished it or if I didn't... I don't think I 100%ed it because there's so many characters in it. That's another game that's kind of baffling.
It's really elaborate,
There's some weird things that you have to do. It's it's not a very linear experience, but it's a beautiful game, and it's it controls really well. It's probably the first Treasure game I ever played. Before I knew they were a big deal.
Excellent.
But Astro Boy. I have seen some of the old the original series. I saw a lot of the 2000 something or whatever version of the cartoon. They keep rebooting the anime over time, and I did try to read a bunch of the manga, but it was getting expensive buying each of those volumes, so I had to bail when I realized how many there were going to be in the long run. I think there's some omnibuses now that I might try to pick up at some point. But standard boy is killed, roboticist father rebuilds him as a robot with superpowers, hijinks ensue,
Mm-hmm. All I really know off the top of my head also about Astro Boy is that he inspired a parody named Hero Boy on the show Freakazoid. He just kept saying, I must succeed! And then he would inevitably fail at whatever he did, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh my gosh. I love Freakazoid, but I don't remember that character.
I forget if it might have only just been a one episode thing. I don't remember if it was recurring, but any excuse to watch Freakazoid again, definitely take it.
Good show.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
love it.
The only thing I really knew about Astro Boy at one point was reference that came from an unlikely source. Calvin and Hobbes.
Ooh.
There's one, basically an arc where he's going to get school pictures done. So first thing he asks his mom if she has any Crisco before he goes to school. And he goes and he puts in his hair, comes back out, he's got his hair all done up in this loop and stuff, and she sees him, she's like, "You're not getting your picture taken like that." Next thing you know, he's at the bus stop, his hair's all combed real nice, and Hobbs is standing there with him, and he's like, "Stupid mom, no good picture." And Hobbs is like, "Well, maybe we can do something about that." And so Hobbs takes his hair for a second, and when he's done, it looks like Astro Boy's hair, and of course Calvin's like, "Well, I can't see. What do I look like?" "You look like Astro Boy." "All right, can't wait to get my picture taken now."
I mean, Astro Boy's kind of a big deal, though. I mean, isn't he, like, technically... Didn't they actually grant him, like, citizenship, like Japanese citizenship? I think there's, like, a statue of him somewhere.
There's definitely a statue. I've seen a picture.
Yeah, I mean, Astro Boy is just... And just as an anime, like, a foundational work that influenced, you know, Western animation. Even, like Disney, I think, right, was influenced by Tezuka, or is that backwards? Was Tezuka like?
Honestly, it's kind of hard to say.
I forget what that link is. But like I wish I knew more about Tezuka's work. But the thing about Astro Boy is, like, you will see those characters in other comics. Like, Tezuka had this thing where he would recycle his character designs and characters in other works as playing different characters. So you would see them in, you know, another one of the games that we'll talk about later, Hinotori. You know, if you ever saw Metropolis, the Rintaro anime film, like, a lot of the character designs from that are from Astro Boy. Like, it's really interesting to have, like, an animator who has, or a mangaka who had the stable of characters that they reused in multiple works.
Yeah, it's always nice to see references like that. Speaking of the statue, though, it's like, you know, there's various statues of anime characters over in Japan. I know from what I've seen. I mean, you've got the Astro Boy statue, you've got the Gundam statue, which is apparently huge.
Oh yeah.
And then you have the statue of the robots from Castle in the Sky, or one of the robots anyway. There's probably, like, you know, 7 dozen other ones over there I've just never seen, but
there's a Ralph Cramp statue at the Port Authority in New York City. I used to pass all the time.
Yeah, and I know there's also a Fonzie statue in Milwaukee.
Right.
And there was a Lucy statue, too, where she was born, except apparently it was hideous. And they had to have it resculpted and everything.
Dang.
They had some splaining to do.
Oh, yeah, they did.
Wah, wah, wah.
Oh, boy. All right, Mike, what's your choice for the next game we should talk about?
Yeah, we got a little bit off the wagon. I almost wanted to talk about Yayar Kung Fu, but how much can you really say about that one? It's pretty basic even for fighting game standards, even if it was a really early fighting game.
Well, you could say it was based on an arcade game. It had an MSX-only sequel. And the Famicom game's based on the MSX port.
Yeah, exactly. I forget what came first between the MSX and the arcade game, but the arcade game was more well realized. It had a full 11 opponents. The NES one only really has 5, but nonetheless, they all present a different challenge. I think the third one, the chain guy, is the toughest of them.
Yeah.
I mean, he's got a freaking chain. Of course, that one's going to be tough. But yeah, Yayar Kung Fu, being a really early fighter, is does not control like fighting games as we know it, and frankly, I find the whole of 80s fighting games before Street Fighter II existed to be a very fascinating subject to dive into, just to see how loose these martial arts titles were before SF2 completely changed the game and codified every single fighter going outward forever, for better or worse. Yayar is certainly way before that. You need to only get in 8 hits on your opponent, and you have a punch and a kick button, and depending on what direction you hold the control pad in, you throw out a different punch or kick, a certain elevation or a certain angle. It's like a faster and cleaner version of Karate Champ, actually. And, it's a pretty minimalist title, all things considered, but I don't know, I appreciate the relative simplicity of it. It's also the type of game that just keeps on going and going, even after you beat the 5 opponents who... first guy's got a stick, second guy breathes fire, third guy has an annoying chain. Fourth opponent is actually a lady, the only female opponent that you fight, and beating Chun-Li by several years as the first lady of fighting games. I want to remember her name. I want to say it was Ling, but I don't remember.
I know the arcade game was Star.
Yeah. The characters in the arcade game were named actually after the weapons that they toted against you. So, you have like pole and club in there. Wang was the stick guy. Tao was the fire guy. Chen's the chain guy. It was Lang who was the throwing star girl. And the final opponent, Mu, would fly at you like Superman, which, funny enough, that's how the first opponent, Bucha, in the arcade version fought, so it's a little bit of an odd flip, but and then you beat them, and then you get to go all over again. Also, there are these bonus stages where shit flies at you from 3 different angles, and you have to ideally try and hit it away, but it's really fucking difficult to do so, and I usually eat shit after, like, the first or second one, so it is what it is.
Now, you said the last boss is named Mu.
Uh-huh.
And you said all the characters in the game are named after the weapons they carry?
Yeah.
So he's a cow.
No, he's a bulky man in white pants.
Oh, that's partially correct.
And it's Mu, or rather Mu, like the Greek letter. So, does that help?
It's a cow.
If you're trying to make a pun out of this, then no, get out.
What I do
There's nothing for you here, sir.
My serious question, though, because I can't remember, is what's the name of the hero character in the Famicom game?
Lee. He's Lee. I forgot to mention that shit. That would have been important.
Yeah, it's Oolong in the arcade game, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, he is exactly. It's strange that this game shares the same title as the arcade game when it is. I mean, in overall control and setup, it is the same game, but it's also like absolutely completely different from the arcade. I couldn't really tell you which one's better. I mean, the arcade version certainly has a lot more characters, but it is also a lot more difficult. I find the NES version generally, I think, more accessible and just a nice little title to play whenever I want a really quick bite, as it were. Also, it is as far as early NES fighting games go, it's not perfect. Sometimes the hit detection can be a little fiddly as these hit the opponent and these relatively basic old school fighters go, but it beats Urban Champion any day of the week, so I quite like it.
Now,
such a low bar.
Yeah, that's not a very high bar to go over.
I will defend Urban Champion as being a little bit more fun than its reputation.
Eugene,
but
Eugene, despite putting it down just now, I honestly agree. One day I actually just got really into playing it and beat several levels of it. I'm like, this game's not awful.
Yeah.
Among the earlier Nintendo titles, it absolutely is not their worst. That goes to Clue Land. Fuck Clue Land. I hate that game.
No.
Fucking bullshit Pac-Man with realistic ass rotation controls. I hate it.
Time out, Mike. Time out.
What's up?
I just distinctly heard Jose say, "Oh no." that means you can actually do something in Clue Land, Jose.
Once you put in enough hours into it, there's a method to its madness. I used to play it a lot when it was an unlockable title in Animal Crossing for the GameCube. So for a time, I was quite used to it.
Darn it! I encountered one of the world's very few Clue Lands fans. Lands fan. Now I'm stumbling over my own words. Okay, my apologies,
I wouldn't
Jose.
go as far as to say I'm a fan, but I like it enough not to say that I dislike the game.
Fair enough. Then I appreciate you guys are defending the games that Rob and I are willing to trash. Though someone needs to stand up for them. Yeah. Although that just makes me curious what your limit is as to what games you think are shitty, but I know it's not really the subject of tonight, but curious. Maybe we can talk about that afterward.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, I do want to say one thing about Lee.
Yeah.
Don't forget, he has a cameo in another Konami game.
Lexi Parodius, yes!
Yes, he does.
Is old 8-bit sprite... Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, his little 8-bit sprite, he's just standing down there next to a pagoda or whatnot, practicing his moves. You can actually bomb him, and he'll fall right in his back and click his heels together just like he does in the original.
It's adorable. I love it.
Mm-hmm. So, Eugene, Jose, either of you have anything to say about Yayar Kung Fu at all?
Sure.
Go for it.
You want to go first, Eugene?
No, I just realized I've never played it. I just did that stream the other night. I didn't even think about it. I think I thought it was a different Kung Fu game.
Whoops.
My first experience with the game was actually on a port for the Nintendo DS. There was a collection of Konami arcade titles, and one of them was that particular game, Yayar Kung Fu.
Cool.
And something that immediately comes to mind for me are I'm sure I'm going to butcher the title. They're called Foon Shorinken. There's two games. They are released on the Famicom Disk System. They were published and developed by Jaleco.
This sounds familiar.
I don't think I've heard of those.
Yeah, they're very much the same. You can mostly just jump and in a really weird hovery kind of way and just kick and punch, and your opponents come in all different weird shapes and sizes, with weapons, without weapons.
Oh dang, this guy's tall. I'm looking up some footage.
Oh, you're looking at it? Yeah, some of those guys, you're like at their abdomen basically.
Yeah, pretty much.
But if you really like those quirky fighting games from the early, mid 80s, then the Foon Shorinken ones they're okay, if you want to just continue playing games like those. But yeah, I had a limited experience on the DS on that compilation. It's all right, It's definitely not something I would invest a whole lot of time into. But if I wanted to kill a couple minutes and I had nothing else to do, then sure, why not?
Oh yeah, definitely. Again, I find all these pre-Street Fighter 2 fighters actually very fascinating, and it's not necessarily an era I miss. Well, it is and it isn't. I almost want more fighting games to be weird and like stilted and more realistic before SF2 made everything like fantasy, like energy projectiles flying out of everyone's hands and whatnot. And I will say though, the original Street Fighter sucks. There's certainly no dressing around that, but I do like Yayar Kung Fu more than Street Fighter 1. And also, Snarby mentioned Galactic Warriors earlier. That was actually quite cool. Pretty fun. It's also a fighting game, but your robots or mechs or whatever. Same premise, I think, is a little weightier and maybe a little less loose than Yayar Kung Fu. But yeah, it's pretty cool ones, I remember.
Stop.
That's it.
Judge.
It's a lot better than Karate Champ, at least.
Yes. Karate Champ is certainly aged. I still like it, but it's a pretty rough cut.
I just want to know why the judge is up in a palm tree in one stage.
Training. It's like his judge bench or whatever. He couldn't afford a bench. Or
who knows? And for anyone, Mr. Great White North has joined us.
Hi.
Hi, Jay. How's it going?
So, let's see. We still have quite a few games to discuss here, actually.
Oh, yes. I mean, that's why you chose the subject. There's a ridiculous wealth of this particular
that's why this
branch.
is Famicom Imports Part 1, right?
Yeah, might as well be. So, that said, Eugene, how about another game that you'd like to talk about?
Oh, man. Let's see. I should pull up the list because I'm like...
If you want to list a certain website that I've come across, just so happens to have one, I'll post it on the YouTube.
Rob sent us a list somewhere. Where is it?
Gee, the list I sent is actually an adaptation of the list that Mike just posted.
Okay.
Well, funny how that works out.
All right, let's see here.
Except that the one Mike
these
posted.
Aren't exclusives, though. These aren't the exclusives. These are just all their games. Right.
Yeah, that's just everything.
Oh.
Well, that's not very useful.
Yeah, Mike.
I'm just kidding.
Yeah, Mike. He said the thing. Wait, hang on.
I think I have it on my desktop.
It's the mute button, damn it. Okay. Say yeah, Mike again.
Yeah, Mike.
There we go.
What to talk about?
Jiminy
Look at
Christmas.
this game list.
Would you like me to pick one in your place, Eugene?
Yeah, go ahead. You should. Yeah, go ahead. I'm gonna pull up the list. Thank you.
Sure. Let's roll with Getsu Fumaden.
All right.
Good choice.
There you go.
I remember being very intrigued by that one when I first saw it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it looked like Castlevania with a samurai.
Yeah.
Only to find out it was a little more involved than just that.
Yeah. It has RPG elements, kind of like Zelda 2 does. His attack is very much a vertical slash, just like Leonardo and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, which is also a Konami title. The character, albeit a gender bend, has made cameos in all sorts of places, including the Yu-Gi-Oh, the card game Yu-Gi-Oh, where he or she is a featured card there, as well as the main villain of the Fumaden franchise.
Yeah, it's I can't think of their name.
Fuma?
Yeah,
Or
No, I was thinking of the villain.
oh yeah, I can never remember his name. I never can.
I'm not sure.
What's crazy is I picked up the game physically and I played through it, and maybe not even a week after I completed it and posted about it on Twitter, they announced the new one, and I couldn't believe it. I said, "Wow, this series is in hibernation since 87," and a week after I finished the game, they decided to announce another one. I said, "Wow, what are the odds of that?"
That's some timing. I do know it came back.
You made it happen.
Yeah, exactly. You made it happen.
Just all your streaming, they're like, "Oh yeah, we have that game. Let's make a whole new game, and re-release the old one, next week."
Now,
next week, yeah.
There was a little bit of Getsu Fumaden activity that happened in between those two events, though.
Of course.
I'm thinking specifically of that one Castlevania game that was like a multiplayer.
Harmony of Despair.
That's right. The one. And
that was actually my introduction to Fuma as a character.
Oh, no kidding.
I was drawn in by the little world they created in one stage. They made one massive stage in that game that encompasses several levels from the original.
Yeah, I remember seeing that.
Oh, it's so fun. It's so good. And the remixed God, I forget what the name of the song is. It's like Go Fuma Go or something like that. But the remix of that song that's in that version, Harmony of Despair, is really catchy. It's really good. I've actually maxed out that character, or at least that version of Fuma, so I can death run the game on the hardest difficulty by myself, which was, boy, that took hundreds of hours to do.
Jeez.
But
nice.
Yeah, but I really developed a fondness for that character, and that was what led me to further research Getsu Fumaden. And to my dismay, I found out that at the time there was only one title, and it was a Famicom only game. So.
Yeah.
No, go ahead.
To say on a related subject, speaking of Castlevania, you remember who here remembers seeing the beta footage from Castlevania 4 that actually supposedly had one of the creatures from Getsu Fumaden in it?
Really?
Yeah.
Are you referring to the whip-wielding skeleton? I think he
No.
made it to the final version of the game, yeah?
No, not him. It's like some kind of a snake man or lizard man or something.
Really? That thing's in
Yeah.
Fumaden? I'm trying to remember. Or in Getsu Fuma.
Yeah, well, this one never made it out of the beta. So
Oh, I remember the video you're referring to. Yeah, that's the one, the notorious one where the guy says fight through a room and a stable.
yeah, through a room. Yeah, exactly.
Wow, there must be some room.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Killer room, probably just stupid.
Yeah, I'll have to go back and check that out and see if I can compare it to any creature from the Getsu Fuma games. But in my mind, they're almost part of the same universe. It's like, oh, this is what's going on in Edo period Japan.
Mm-hmm. In fact, they might even have that on the Castlevania dungeon. I think Kurt put it up there.
I'll have to take a look. Yeah, I'll have to see what Kurt wrote about it.
Yeah.
It's likely. I want to address something, and Snarv actually reminded me of this. He said he's played Genpei Tomaden, the Namco game, which he always confuses. I've wondered, is the connection between Genpei Tomaden and Getsu Fumaden because of how similar their titles are? Like, do they both share, like, their, history in the Genji and Heike clan war that was the basis of Genpei Tomaden also? Like, I don't know. Has anyone confirmed the connection between those games?
To my knowledge, the Genji and Heike wars are strictly just part of Genpei Tomaden, or Tomaden, however you want to pronounce it. I'm pretty sure the story for Getsu Fumaden was original.
Well, shit. I guess this was a dead end, and I apologize for wasting everyone's time.
Dead end.
Last. At any rate, it's been a long time since I have played this game, and I seem to remember playing a somewhat rickety English translation of it, but it is quite good. It is basically like Konami Zelda 2, although the action is faster. I recall Fuma having a bit of a comparable, if not quicker, gait than Link. And he does have that wide sword swing, but the enemies can come pretty fast and vicious. I mean, early on you have these, bug-eyed heads floating, slower, but in a similar pattern like Medusa's, the Medusa heads. It's also, I think, the pathways on the overworld are certainly more linear than they were in Zelda 2. Like, I remember them just being, kind of sort of big semi-mazes, as I recall, and I might have needed an FAQ to know exactly where to go at some point, but it wasn't quite as cryptically baffling as Zelda 2 could be at times. It has been quite a long while since I played through it, but I remember rather enjoying my time with it, and I appreciate that Konami reveres this one enough to be included in both YY worlds, but that almost would make one think that they were going to make this something more of a series, but we haven't gotten any game except for that Giant Harmony of Despair level and the recent Undying Moon, which I have still yet to play myself, so. But it is an interesting title, and also all its grim hell imagery, I guess, wouldn't have passed for the West, but,
No.
It is what it is.
It is very, very Japanese. Not that it's, stopped games like that from coming out over here before, but, yeah, Japanese hell, that's usually something different.
Yeah, I mean, Monster Party could maybe get away with it because that game wasn't as... Well, it was Japanese enough. You had those dancing zombies with the taiko drum, but, this game with all of its morbid imagery, plus it also being incredibly Japanese, it was doomed from the start, and I don't even know how the title would have translated over here anyway, so...
Well, it's kind of like how I was surprised that the sequel to Genpei Tomaden actually made it over here.
Samurai Ghost, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And they didn't really change much about that other than giving it a translation.
That is true, yes. then again, I always got the impression that the TG16 was a little bit more anything goes than the NES was. So
Yeah, well, yeah.
Now, Jose, when you played Getsu Fumiden, did you
Mhm.
play the Japanese version or did you play a translation of it?
Well, the only time I've ever completed it, I played through the translated version. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, because I'm wondering how playable like it actually is. If anybody did buy it,
Well,
with the remake, how
if
far are they
it,
going to get in that game?
yeah, if you can get used to the like the shops, the
Mhm.
shops and that whole little system, I guess. Once you're able to do that, it's not too bad. I'd say it's like the equivalent of maybe playing through the Japanese version of Castlevania 2. Once you know where you're going and what to purchase and when to purchase it, you don't really have to read anything.
Yeah, I actually own the cartridge myself.
Same.
And
Yeah,
I picked up the
definitely.
cartridge as well. Like I played enough of Getsu Fumiden to know that I want to finish it. I want to play through it, and I want to play through it, without a walkthrough if possible. But
Oh yeah.
I think I'm leaning towards playing the translation of it,
Hmm.
at least the first time through,
Yeah.
just to make it a little bit easier on me. And I know I'm waiting on Jose's video because I think he promised to do a video at some point.
Oh God, did I? Oh, I need to get
I
on
don't know.
that.
You recorded a playthrough of it, didn't you? Which you were going to
I
post?
did. I did.
Yeah.
God. I have so
Just
many
piling
unfinished
stuff onto
projects.
your, just piling stuff
slacking,
onto you.
man.
Right?
See, Jose forgets about his projects, but I don't.
No, he doesn't.
I remember all the things you said you were working on.
He
So
keeps better track of my projects than I do. It's terrible.
don't forget. Don't forget.
Oh
My
no.
organization sucks, so I totally get it. But
I appreciate it, Eugene.
Yeah.
now the question I have for all of us that actually own the original cartridge: do you have a loose copy or a box one?
I have a box one.
I have a loose one.
So, what do you think of that? The cover of the box on that one, Jose?
It's so pretty. It's what do they call it?
Lenticular.
Lithograph? Lenticular.
Oh,
That's the word I'm
right.
looking for. Yeah, it has a lenticular cover, and it looks so cool. So freaking cool.
Yeah, I think we should have gotten more stuff like that. It was just neat
Yeah.
to have, especially
No
since
kidding.
they used two unique pieces of artwork on there, and it's just like, okay, this is really cool.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I had to be sure to pick it up complete in box just because in my mind it's part of the Castlevania canon, even if it might not be, and I have to get all those games complete. So I was very adamant about getting that one. Undying Moon's getting a physical release too, and
really?
I ponied up the money for that. It's going to be through limited run games, so
Yeah,
I give it another 4 years before I see it.
exactly.
So because of Rob, I just Googled. I was like, let me see if I can find a box copy of this game, and instead I came across there's a book. There's a
Wow.
Getsu Fumiden. I think it's a novel called Battle of
Really?
the Dawn of the Demon Age.
Really?
Ooh,
It's on eBay. I don't know if you can find it cheaper anywhere else. It's like listed for like $95, but it looks like it's a light novel or something.
Ooh.
Like an original story, or there's like illustrations in it. Holy cow, this looks great.
Oh, I've got to see that. Please send it my way.
Yeah, I'll send
Yeah.
you the. I'll post the link.
Awesome.
I'll check that out too.
Sorry for the. Well, I get excited about books, especially.
No,
based
this
on
is
video games.
totally
It'd be funny if
related.
it's like the
No, that's
Japanese
cool.
Worlds of Power, like they did a World of Power Getsu novel or something.
I love it.
Boy.
What we can do is we can hope for the Strider Tankobon, but end up with Worlds of Power, Castlevania 2, Simon's Quest. Talk about your best and worst case scenarios, right?
Too bad we never got a Worlds of Power Getsu Fumiden.
Of course, we probably would have had to get the game first.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, where Joe goes through Edo, Japan, and rescues Fuma and his friends.
Yeah, all the while he's suffering a debilitating addiction to Kool-Aid or something.
Hey, there you go.
Or
It writes
some
itself.
bullshit.
And on top of that, the final boss of Getsu Fumiden looks like a 1930s gangster. Anyone who's read Simon's Quest knows what I'm talking about here.
Oh yeah.
It's been a long time since I read that, but I definitely read it before I played Simon's Quest, and I loved the heck out of that book. And I have a copy. I have most of the Worlds of Power series on my shelf. but it's a weird book.
Yes.
The thing that I remember most about it, because I thought this was really cool, is that it starts out with the kid is playing Castlevania. I guess it must have been Castlevania 2 before school, and I think he has to pause the game or something to leave because his mom's like harassing him to go to school and everything. It's like, man, I wish I could play Nintendo before I went to school.
Yeah. Yeah, and it just gets weirder from there.
Okay, I just googled this, and apparently, this Getsu Fumiden book is a choose your own adventure book.
Oh, no kidding.
Wow.
Holy shit.
I didn't even know they had those in Japan.
Oh my gosh.
That makes
I'm
sense.
super excited about this. I can't read it, but I need to see if there's any sort of translation about it anywhere. Somebody did a translation. This is way off topic. Somebody did a translation of two Earthbound tie-in novels that were published in Japan. And I'm in the middle of the one based on Earthbound Beginnings.
Wow.
And it's very strange. It's like very loosely based on the game, but I honor the attempt.
Well, as long as I have one of the villains dressing up like, well, actually for Earthbound, this probably wouldn't be too far off. Dressing up like a hood from 1950s Brooklyn.
I'm never going to read those. I'm not even going to ask.
That Simon's Quest book is such an 80s, like a product of the 80s. Like, there was all these stories, like the He-Man movie was about like He-Man coming to Earth, right? Yep. Was it the second Conan movie or the third Conan movie? Not Conan. Beastmaster was about Beastmaster coming to Earth, and then you've got Simon's Quest where Simon's coming to Earth. Like, it's just a thing. It's the thing that was happening back then.
I remember one part of that wanted me to kind of, I just wanted to bang my head against the wall at this point. It's when, first of all, Simon's meeting this kid in the men's room at school.
Yes. Yeah.
And then the metalhead guy comes in and is like, "Whoa, aren't you Metallica or something?" And Simon's like, "No, I'm from Castlevania." "Oh, great group, man. I got all your CDs."
Wow.
It's like, the hell am I reading?
Can we get back to Konami?
Hey, we're talking about Simon's Quest. That's still Konami.
But that's a game we got over here. Is the thing.
Oh, that's a good point. All right, so anything else about Getsu Fumiden? Now, since we're on that,
I'd love to watch Eugene stream it, and I'd love to get comfortable enough with the game to where I can play through the original copy without feeling the need to lean on the translation as much.
Yeah.
Cool.
Eugene?
Well, I will definitely stream that.
Awesome.
Okay, and I'm actually going to go next with a game here that I would really like to talk about. Now, for those of you who know me, would think just by looking at my avatar, I'm talking about Gradius 2. That was the game that got me started on importing in the first place, because it showed up in GamePro issue 2, and all indications were it was coming to the U.S. And they showed up in EGM after that, and I remember looking for it, and never showed up. And then in '94, I went to this brand new video game store. It opened up, and my friend Bromley and our mutual friend Steve and I were walking around checking everything out, and I just happened to glance up at one point. There's all these Famicom boxes hanging from the ceiling. So I'm looking at this, and I happen to see a silver one over in the corner. I get closer, and it's Gradius 2. So owner comes out of the back at this point, and he's like, "Yeah, I help you guys or anything?" It's like, "Yeah, are you selling any of these games hanging from the ceiling?" And he kind of looks at me. He's like, "You mean you want to buy one?" "Yeah." "Huh. Sure." And he goes into the back and he pulls out this huge box full of games. It's like the ones he had hanging up there were just the tip of the iceberg. But of course, I was like, "Yeah, I want this one in particular here." So, yeah, he pulls it down, and he's like, he's asking me about my NES to have a lockout chip. He's got converters, honeybee converters and whatnot. So, we run back to my place, grab my NES spring, and he hooks it up, tries it with the honeybee, works beautifully. And I'm like, okay, I want this, and I'm looking around, and it's like, ooh, that looks interesting too. What's this Holy Diver game? Kind of looks like Castlevania. And I was like, well, I don't have a lot of money, but maybe we'll see what he wants for him. If nothing else, I'm buying Gradius too. So it's like, so how much are you asking for these? And he's like, those 2 games plus a honeybee, $20.
Damn.
Sold. However, that's not the game I wanted to talk about, believe it or not. We did a whole stream on Gradius, where we did cover Gradius too. We could probably come back to it, later on. But I want to talk about a game that we haven't talked about on any of our streams yet. Crisis Force.
That's the music that you opened with.
Yes, indeed.
Great choice.
That is one of the best shooters I've ever played for the Famicom, period. It is... And some of the effects and stuff that it does, it's almost like... I once dubbed it the Axley of the Famicom.
Ooh.
Surprisingly, some website that was making like repro boxes and stuff actually picked that up and used it on the cover. It's like a blurb. The Axley of the Famicom. And it's like, I know where that came from.
Attributed to a random guy on the internet.
Thank you. I am random. But it was a late release. And as such, that's one of the main reasons it never made it over here, because, we already had the Super NES by then, and 8-bit sales were declining in the U.S. And you know how Gradius had the Moai theme going on? All the Easter Island stuff?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, in Crisis Force's case, they went with an ancient Egyptian theme. In fact, I think the whole thing has to do with, like, the lost continent of Mu, and about these 2 kids who fight an invading force, and it turns out they're descendants of, like, the last royalty from that continent, or whatever it is.
I have to ask, continent of Mu, are the enemies cows?
Yes.
Here, how do you like it?
There are cows. There are lots of cows in that stage.
Okay, that's cool. I was just curious.
There are no cows in this game. Plenty of spiders, though.
Oh,
yeah, for some reason they threw spiders in, too.
Dang.
But if you've never played through, I'm pretty sure, Mike, you've played through it, right?
Yes, I have. It's been some time, but game's fucking great. I actually remember when I first played it long ago. I had certainly heard a lot of greatness about it, but the only emulator I knew about back in the day was Nesticle, and
Oh boy.
this game was not very well compatible with Nesticle. In fact, I remember it ran at half pace, and the music felt like it was on NyQuil or something. It definitely feels like one of the most powerful games that Konami's ever made for that system. I'm sure it runs on, at least like the same VCR6 or thingy or whatever that Castlevania 3 ran on. But yeah, game's awesome. Just 7 levels of really hard and fast shooting. You get, as I recall, a more straightforward and powerful blue weapon and a wider spread red weapon. I I might be mixing them up, and I know if you collect...
That's correct.
Okay, and if you collect enough of these power-ups, your ship transforms into this even bigger, winged, cooler ship and becomes invincible and spits out a lot of projectiles, but your timer runs out as you get hit, which, as I remember, the invincible suit that you can get in Shatterhand also operated on the same rules. And, yeah, I just recall it was just a really freaking overall solid shoot-'em-up. Definitely a challenge, not too crushingly hard, but you definitely have to work for your victory. I remember the final boss looked extremely badass also. I'm not going to spoil it, but, yeah, I recall it's like the first level is kind of like this broken sort of, this wrecked sort of cityscape. I guess the invaders, tearing up the city, as is endemic of a lot of shoot-'em-ups. And I recall a giant rift opens up in the earth, and this amazing parallax scrolling down to the bottom of the pit with the edges of the earth walls in there, and actually I'm looking at it right now. This is still really fucking impressive, and the city-scape
breathtaking.
Yeah.
It's It's gorgeous. It looks gorgeous. It sounds gorgeous. It plays like a dream. Is this the best shoot 'em up on the NES, or is there something I'm missing?
It's certainly one of the top 3.
This, Life Force, and maybe Gradius 2 also? Yeah.
This is one of the more expensive Famicom carts that I'm kind of eyeing and thinking I might spring for it at some point. It gets up there because obviously it never was released outside Japan.
Even
this one might be worth it.
Yeah, it
even
is.
before the bullshit price bubble that's never gonna pop fucking set in. I remember this one still being pretty fucking expensive back in the day, so,
Well, again, late release.
Yeah,
Take that into account, too.
Yeah, shmup fans especially seemed, as I recall, in the earlier days of retro collecting, shoot 'em up fans in particular seem rather dedicated to imports, because for some reason that was a genre that had an unusually high number of games that didn't leave Japan. I guess shoot 'em ups had always been a lot more niche in the West, so henceforth. But yeah, I remember that one was being really heavily praised for the day, and I can see why the price would be high. And
another neat thing about it is that you can actually change the form of your ship as you go along.
Oh yeah, that's right. You have different firing modes for it.
So.
I can't remember what exactly like one was more straightforward and one was like kind of like a rear gun and
side guns. I think I want them.
Side, yes, I remember this now. Again, it has been a while since I played, but I appreciate any shoot 'em up that allows you to cover your blind spots, because several shoot 'em ups I played, like the R-Type series, really like hounding you from the spots that you can't normally reach unless like you put your force back there or whatever. But
that all said, go ahead.
I was just going to say it also kind of reminds me a bit of Musha and the Genesis for some reason, which is also a really high amount of praise, I feel.
Oh yeah, definitely. So Eugene, I know I saw you stream a little bit of this the other night, and you said you'd played it before when you were doing that.
Well, I had only played a little bit of it before. Like I tried it out because I was streaming some other game, and I was playing a worse shoot 'em up. I don't remember which one it was, but then I decided to try a good one, so I tried Crisis Force. So I've only played through. I think last night or the other night was the farthest I've gotten in the game, which is only a few levels in. But it didn't seem like it seems like like a challenge, but not punishingly hard.
Yeah,
and I think I did better that night than I had the previous playthrough. It's a great, amazing looking game. Like it's one of those games that when you look at it, you're like, this couldn't possibly have been on the NES. Like looking at that, like something like Batman: Return of the Joker, some of those games that really pushed the graphics on the NES, those late releases where they knew exactly what they were doing. But the parallax, like I am a sucker for good parallax scrolling in a game, and
oh yeah,
big same,
It looked amazing, and not, and it is so easy for that to be disorienting, but it just worked really well.
Yeah, it did.
Yeah, so I had a great time with it. I definitely want to play through more of it.
Definitely worth it.
You should.
So, Jose, have you played this one at all?
I have more experience with the first and the third, just because I stumbled across the first one for, I want to say something like, it was pretty low. It was like unusually low.
Wait, I'm sorry to interrupt, Jose, but first and the third what? Crisis Force is the only game I know.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought we were talking about Gradius.
We did start with Gradius.
Yeah. Oh, we diverged from that.
I had to tell my import story.
No, if anything, Crisis Force, that was the one with Eugene was describing the parallax scrolling where it looked like it was a really deep chasm, right? Because that was really cool.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, then any experience I have with that game really is just purely through just watching Eugene play it. And, I mean, it looked really good, visually stunning. I loved the depth. It was almost like an optical illusion, right? Just like it made it look like it was really, really, really far, really deep. At least that little chasm segment there, that really grabbed my attention too. I was kind of blown away by that. I didn't know that the NES can do stuff like that. I mean, I know the NES does parallax scrolling just fine. Ninja Gaiden
Ninja Gaiden 2 really stands out there, but I've never seen something done quite like they did with Crisis Force.
Yeah, it's really amazing what they're able to pull off. Such a great. If you can find a way to play it, definitely play it.
Yeah, any way you can, as Snestrunk would say, which means, you know, ... If you can't buy it, then ...
Break into your friend's house and steal their copy.
Go for that, yeah, sure.
Providing you have a friend who has it and won't notice it missing.
According to the government, that might be slightly less legal than the way I'm actually... Slightly more legal than the way I'm suggesting, which is all kinds of foobar. But I digress.
Anyway.
You know, it's interesting. Like, you know, I don't want to sidetrack things with limited run too much, but they have been releasing some old Konami games, and it would be great if they released something like Crisis Force, like they did the first like Western release of that.
There you go.
Yeah. All right. So Eugene, you'd skipped yours before Jose had picked one. So what do you got this time?
I did. So the list, I kept missing the list because Discord does this very helpful thing of collapsing some posts, and I kept scrolling past the little carrot that meant there was more there. So anyway, I found the list again. Since I just played this for the first time a few nights ago, although I've owned the cartridge for a little while, King Kong 2, Ikari no Megaton Punch. And so since we were talking about Goonies and Goonies 2 earlier, this is like one of those games where there actually is not a King Kong NES game or Famicom game. This is just the sequel, I guess, maybe to the movie or just something like that.
If I'm not mistaken, correct me if I'm wrong, there was a King Kong remake in the 70s?
Yes, but I do my best not to ever talk about that one because it's pretty bad.
I heard it fucking sucks, yes. And yet, amazingly, somehow, that specific remake, it was 1976, yes. For some reason, a decade later, that specific remake got made specifically from its sequel called King Kong Lives, and that was called King Kong 2 in some countries. And King Kong Lives is what King Kong 2 Ikari no Megaton Punch was based off of.
Right, and actually it says that on the title screen. It says it's like a trademark of, you know, whatever company it is. This is King Kong.
Dino De Laurentiis, I think. The De Laurentiis Entertainment Group, which...
There's a pedigree for you.
That is fucking bonkers.
The game is interesting. It's a top-down view game. You basically are King Kong. You walk around, you can punch things, and you can jump. And when you jump, it's kind of cool because there's like the earth actually shakes as it would if King Kong jumped. But that doesn't have any sort of an impact on any of the enemies or anything. It's just a neat like effect. But that's and you can throw rocks. Like those are your attacks, as far as I know, because I've only played like the first couple stages of it. And it's a little bit confusing. Well, it seems very linear. At least the world one that I started out in seems very linear. Like you can really only scroll the screen upwards, so you keep going north. But then occasionally you'll like break something, and there'll be like a little warp portal or something inside there that looks like a window. And then when you go through that, suddenly you're in another world. And if you walk down on the screen, then you exit that world again. But if you move into the world, then you're just like in another area. And so like I went through a window in World 1 and suddenly I was in World 3. I was like, okay, I don't know what's going on here. So I wandered around there in a little while, and then somewhere in World 3, I think I found a portal to World 2, but then I went back to World 3. I think I actually did beat World 3. I beat those bosses at the end of it. They're just like bullet sponges, or I guess fist sponges, because you just keep punching them and they shoot these fire like beams out at you. So I had to look this up after I streamed it. I only played it for like a little while because I was trying to get through a lot of Konami Famicom games, not Capcom. So I had to look it up, and apparently it's very non-linear. You can go to any of the worlds in any order, provided you find... There's like 8 worlds, provided you find a portal to them. I don't know that there's any sort of strategy involved with doing that. And I believe it had like passwords and stuff too, so that was nice. It seems fun. Like, it seems fine. It's a fine game. Like, there's nothing really wrong with it. There's nothing really right with it either. It's a game. If you really like King Kong, you should check it out. I think it's probably better. I think I find it more fun than the Godzilla NES game, the first Godzilla NES game that we got, which is not, which is fine but kind of repetitive. So yeah, I mean it's a weird game because it's King Kong. It's like a King Kong adventure game in weird parallel worlds that I don't know how that ties into anything in the movies.
Yeah,
and he's trying to save his girlfriend. I forgot about that. He's trying to save
that's about
King Kong.
That's about the only part that's actually accurate to King Kong Lives.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, yes, there is a giant female ape in the movie called Lady Kong. This is canon.
Lady Kong.
That I don't remember. I'll be honest, I haven't seen King Kong Lives, and surprise, surprise, the movie apparently sucks. The game that we got out of this is probably the absolute best thing that came out of this cursed remake duo, but it is what it is, I guess. I mean, apparently another Kong film wasn't attempted until Peter Jackson's in 2005, so maybe the property could have had a few bit more life in the West if we had gotten King Kong 2 over here. Why that remained a Japan exclusive, I couldn't tell you. Maybe there were some rights issues tangled up or whatever. But I do actually remember beating this one. It has been quite a bit of time, but I remember rather enjoying it, even if the level structure being as odd as it was could be a little bit difficult to navigate. That being said, I am seeing that if you know where you're going in this game, you can actually really fucking blaze through it. Apparently, I'm seeing a tool-assisted speed run. I guess there's glitches in there, so maybe that's not the most accurate, but that said speed run is nonetheless below 3 minutes. I'm seeing a non-assisted one that comes up just a little bit short of 20 minutes, so if you know what you're doing, you can apparently be beaten pretty quickly. I obviously took more time than that, but as I remember, it is quite a fun game. I liked how agile I felt despite being a gigantic monkey, but yes, I do appreciate the detail with jumping and the screen shaking on impact. I liked its somewhat occasionally Zelda-ish structure. I like how you were warping between the city and the countryscapes, and you're warping to these weird sort of alien bases that felt all cold and sterile, and it's a very interesting structure. Certainly I wouldn't call this the greatest game on the Famicom, but it is absolutely worth checking out if you're in for a rather peculiar action game.
King Kong,
where you're a
the
giant
multiverse of madness.
Well, I mean, King Kong would become one of the more crossover characters in cinema history. I mean, shit, King Kong versus Godzilla was like from the 60s, so.
Mm-hmm. But you, Jose?
Well, I always found the art really, really funny in a way because it's so dark and vicious looking on the cover, and then in game it looks so happy and playful.
Yes.
Yeah, those "I love Lady Kong" screams are just hilarious.
Yeah.
Man.
And to tie back to the whole, Marvel-esque Avengers, with YY World, I kind of low key was thinking King Kong is definitely the Incredible Hulk of the group.
Yeah. Not too far off.
I've only played a couple stages too. Probably, if I had to guess, about the same amount of time that Eugene put into it. I've always had an interest in picking it up just because I know it's part of their Konami cinematic universe. But and it's always hovered around the $20 range. But for whatever reason, even when I saw it in local stores, I just didn't pick it up, which is unusual because you would think, oh, well, I won't go out of my way to get it. And then when it's actually right in front of me, I'm like, well, I'm still not getting it. But I guess the gameplay didn't grip me enough to want to fork over the $20. But I don't know. Maybe, now that I am a little leaning more heavily towards collecting imported, Famicom titles, I might pick it up next time I come across it. hopefully for 20 again. Although I'm sure it's gone up since then.
It's not as good as Crisis Force, if I can even compare to that. That was probably off base, but you could do worse.
Totally related gameplay, yes.
Womp.
I don't recall it being actually that much anymore from what I've seen. It kind of ranges.
Okay, so I might be able to find it still within a reasonable price. Maybe I'll check J4U and see if I could just throw it into a pile.
Yeah, it's still one of the lower priced Konami games.
It looks like I bought this from J4U a couple years ago for $1.17.
Wow.
So I think that's affordable.
Yeah.
Just a little.
Let me take a look now. I'm gonna take a look right this second and see what it currently sells for.
So
I'm curious. Not bad. It's like somewhere in the range of $3 to $5. So wow, yeah.
Jeez, that is a good deal.
Could be yours.
Yeah. Wouldn't be the worst thing I've ever purchased.
I can think of worse ways to blow $3.
Back to the Future 2 and 3.
You would have to bring that up, wouldn't you?
I'm sure that's more than $3.
Oh god, it shouldn't be.
Whatever.
It should be like $-. Someone should fucking pay me to play that piece of shit again.
Exactly. That said, anyone else have any thoughts on King Kong 2?
What? I think we covered it pretty well. What do you guys think?
My experience with it's kind of summed up in what Bruno said there in the chat.
Oh yeah. So it's nobody's favorite, I can tell that, but I think it's all right for what it is. Good for better than the movie it's based off of, if that's worth anything.
Yeah. At least it's got that.
Hinotori.
Well, we could talk about that one. And actually, out of the two, at one point later on, I actually did buy another copy of that. I like it a bit more than King Kong 2.
It's just ironic because I don't think I've ever actually beaten Hinotori yet. That's something I should get on.
Gotten pretty far in it, actually. It's definitely an unusual game with the whole, picking up these blocks that used to be the enemies, so you shoot them with your little chisel or whatever. And if you don't pick them up, they'll just kind of keep going along the screen until they either fall off or they hit something and then they turn solid.
Yeah.
The weirdest thing about it, so I had played it like very briefly early on when I was trying to decide if I wanted to buy it or when I was curious about the game, and I played a little bit more of it the other night for the first time, and probably the only thing I think that it really has against it is like the physics of it, in that it's very slippery.
Yeah,
it's one of those games where you build up momentum and it's really hard for you to stop. But you get used to that. It's not quite as bad as Kid Cool, or the games from that series. It seems interesting. Like it seems fine. I think it's an interesting mechanic, like being able to create these blocks and be able to create blocks in ways that you wouldn't expect to be able to. It's like you can jump in midair and create a block under you, which actually, now that I think about it, reminds me of when I was playing Donkey Kong Country 2, which I'm sure will incense Rob, where you can create those platforms with the web platforms with the spider buddy, and that you can create them like directly under you. Is basically like that,
Because that's one of Rob's favorite games ever.
Right.
Yeah. Should go to say I'm not a fan of any Donkey Kong Country game, but I digress. We're talking Hinotori.
Yeah.
It's Hinotori.
Unfortunately, I really haven't played as much of Hinotori as I could have, but if it's a recommended one to play, then it's one that I should definitely get on this year. I mostly just remember you played as that bearded, big-nosed guy.
Yeah.
Who, not to be confused with Big Nose the Caveman.
I know a little bit of the manga it's based off of, like Phoenix was it called, I want to say, and like that was I don't remember. I heard it was a pretty grand and sweeping series that unfortunately its creator died before it could be fully finished, but There are apparently several.
Another Osamu Tezuka, I'll call it joint.
Okay.
So it's also
Goes
part of like
Tezuka.
that kind of overall his works, so like some of the recurring characters. So I'm almost certain that the Hinotori, the main character in that, is like from another. Like you've probably seen him in other stories, possibly even Astro Boy. I have a very quick digression of like my Hinotori story. I have a Hinotori story, or the way that I first became aware of Phoenix. So when my wife and I lived in New York, we were dating at the time. We used to, as a writer, a cliche writer does, I would go to coffee shops and I would write in coffee shops. And she would come with me and she would work on her own projects. And so one day we were at a coffee shop in like the Lower East Side, and I was writing, and she had this cool like laptop, like a Vio like mini laptop, and she struck up a conversation with someone else who had the same laptop, and that guy he introduced himself as he's like a voice actor. So, and you might know him. His name is Michael Sinter-Nicholas. So he famously was the voice of Dean Venture. But he was telling us about a project that he was currently dubbing at the time, which was the American dub of Phoenix, so the anime. So that's how I first found out about it.
Wow.
And that series, and kind of that's like where some of my interest in that came from. And actually, it was really cool when the guy got into conversation. He actually gave me. This is such a random and New York and Eugene story, but he had copies of Phoenix on his laptop, like the subtitled like fan subs or something of them. So he was like, I wish I could give you a copy. I was like, well, I have these DVD-Rs in my bag. So if you don't mind, I'll just you can copy them, and if there's anything you want, I've got Doctor Who episodes on my laptop. So we traded Doctor Who and Phoenix anime in this coffee shop totally randomly. Like I just happen to have burnable discs in my bag because that's who I am.
Nice.
So yeah, that's my Phoenix story.
Wow.
Good dingus.
I don't think we can top that one.
Yeah.
Nope. Unfortunately, I certainly can't. Like I said, I haven't played the game enough. I just remember that. I think it also has a little bit of a weird level structure. Like there are certain doors that you need to take in stages in order to get to other levels, and I don't know if it would beckon any walkthroughs to keep things from being too confusing, but it is, I think, as I recall, a pretty visually neat game. I remember the music being great, and I mostly remember that what it was based off of was the fifth arc of Phoenix, known as Karma, which is apparently the most famous one of them all. Kind of like, I guess, arguably how Stardust Crusaders was to JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. Like, if I had to talk about popular manga arcs, but yeah, you're the one-eyed and one-armed bandit Gao who... he was rejected by his village, and unfortunately he became like a rogue who actually killed people on the road, and he attacks a sculptor by the name of Akane Maru, who he apparently learns how to sculpt from him somehow, and Akane Maru kind of loses his marbles while Gao becomes more virtuous over time. It seems like a pretty interesting work, and I'm not sure how much of the sense of that you get from this game. I imagine it's a pretty loose basis, but I do like the premise how you're connecting all these pieces of the giant Phoenix portrait, and just how it's just how it's structured to go through all of these areas. I'm seeing even there's one part here that goes to like a futuristic city, and I really have to wonder if that was like that in the manga or if this is original. I have no idea. Well, it's a very interesting game, one that I think will definitely demand more time. I just hope it's not too confusing to navigate.
I'm a little worried about you mentioning door mazes, because that's like my kryptonite in video games.
How about that last level of Revenge of Shinobi, bro?
How about that stage in Monster Party, Eugene?
Stage 6. Lovely, isn't it?
Neat wind
An
effects,
hour and a half. I mapped it for an hour and a half on stream.
Nice.
Wow.
Because I was like, I have to get through this game, and then everything was great after that. Like,
Yeah. So my introduction My introduction with Hinotori was actually through Game Center CX. I watched.
Nice.
I watched the Cacho play through the entire game, and it was one of the games that he managed to beat. And I came to find out that like all the doors, well, besides being introduced to the game in general, I came to find out that actually you don't necessarily have to go through all the doors to access at least the majority of the areas. There's only one final area where the last portrait piece is, and I guess for that one door you do need to know where that is. Otherwise, all the levels eventually wrap in a big circle. So if you want to play through the game and avoid the whole door maze aspect, you can do it if you know where the final door is.
Ah, okay.
So I think that's something worth noting. But I think it's really cool. As soon as I watched that episode, I checked J4U and said, hey, how much does that go for? I wouldn't mind picking it up for a couple bucks. And surely enough, it was a couple bucks.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That news about avoiding the door maze must be just a huge relief to you, Eugene.
I'm putting the game back on my list to play.
Nice.
I freely admit I knew exactly zero about Phoenix until I played this game for the first time. And that's basically my experience with the game, or with the series as a whole. I played
it. What a scintillating story.
I know,
I didn't
right?
even know it was based off an anime until I was doing sort of a little show and tell on the channel, and I was showing people my pickups, and then somebody casually mentioned, "Oh yeah, that one's based off the anime." I was like, "What anime?"
I didn't know there was an anime. I thought it was just a manga. Well, I'm sure most manga get animes, but
Did they mention it casually, or were they like, actually?
Oh yeah,
no, it was based on an old anime series.
Funny. I think they assumed that I knew, and they just threw it out there. And then when they came to realize that I didn't know, I was viciously attacked for the next 2 hours. No, I'm kidding.
Unsubscribe.
Right.
I wouldn't unbelieve it. That's just how some.
Sorry, I thought you knew everything about everything.
Right.
Oh man. Yeah. Well, I don't know everything about everything, so unless anyone else has anything they want to add about this one, I know there's a couple of big games we haven't touched on yet that we should definitely get to.
You didn't come back to me to talk about another one, did you?
You were actually next on the list.
Yeah, anyway, we went this whole Hinotori side quest before he got to me anyway, so I feel like a little left out.
We're just in a door maze.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh no!
And one path leads to another path leads to another path, but we eventually get there.
And,
yeah, as long as you avoid the bloody swamp, please do that.
And you'll notice, Mike, that I said a lot of big games we haven't talked about.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, you actually totally called it. I wanted to talk about the big game that my big avatar is representing. Good old fat little Penta there. The game in question that I wanted to talk about, and that I just love the sprite for that. Still, it's tops. Yume Penguin Monogatari, apparently meaning Story of the Dream Penguin, is mostly a platformer. Although I believe there are a couple of shooting stages in it as well.
There are.
Yep. It has been a bit of time since I played it, so my memory's rusty. But you play as Penta the Penguin, who his girlfriend Penko does not like how incredibly obese he's become, so he vows to attempt to lose weight to win her back. Meanwhile, she goes into the arms of a much more blatantly evil penguin by the name of Genji, who has shades and a top hat and a constantly evil grin. And Genji sends out his goons to try and give Penta sugary sweets. Apparently apples have an incredibly high sugar content, unless those aren't apples. I don't know what they are. But
candy apples.
Yeah, candy apples. There you go.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, so enemies throw candy apples, and there are like chocolate bars or whatever on the stage that you have to avoid. The premise is that Genji is trying to fatten you back up, but you need to collect these diet drinks, which reduce Penta's weight. And he actually, when you actually start out playing him, he is that large blob that he starts out as. Actually, there might be a state that's even fatter than your default. I don't remember. It has certainly been.
If I may insert something here. This is the same Pentaro who used to be a real fitness champion, because he raced around Antarctica.
Antarctica, yes.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and then did it again to rescue, what's her name?
But I already forget her name. Penko.
Penko, yep.
He got really lazy and or possibly depressed, and that's where everything fell off the rails, but... when you start out in Penta's fat state, his attack is a somewhat awkward belly flop that actually has him freeze in place for a second, but as you collect these diet drinks and get slimmer,
shape up?
Yeah, it's a thing drops down saying shape up, which has you move a bit faster and changes your attack to a more reasonable kick in your sort of just somewhat overweight phase. And then when you get down to being thin enough in your thinnest state, you actually shoot out projectiles from your beak. They appear to be some sort of like projectilized shouts, which I swear is something I've seen in the fighting game and other games too, but it's a weird Japanese sort of thing, I guess. And yeah, you have to make it to the end of the level with a certain thinness quotient, so to speak, represented by a heart marker on your weight gauge. And at first, this heart marker is pretty generous. I think you can still actually be somewhat chubby and beat the first level, but in the later levels, the heart ticks down further to the right, where, the requirements for victory get stricter until... For the last stage, it's down 2/3 or 3/4 of the way to your own bar, and you have to absolutely remain as thin as possible. One ill projectile could inflate you back up to the unacceptable level, and if you go all the way to the goal but you're too fat, Penko says, no way, Jose, and you got to start the level over again, if I'm not mistaken.
On top of that, if you fall into the water, you basically turn instantly fat.
The water is apparently made entirely out of sugar, which, I guess that's why, some characters dissolve when they fall into it. But, Penta doesn't dissolve, he just immediately inflates. Maybe, it's light blue colors because it's I don't know, blue raspberry Baja Blast soda or some bullshit, I don't know.
Who knows?
Anyway, it is a short game, and while the later levels can be a bit tricky to maintain your proper weight, as it were, as I recall, it is mostly very easy, and, if you're good enough, you can have it beaten in less than 20 minutes. It is quite fast overall, and I do find the premise very interesting, how you have a weight meter instead of a life meter, and it is also a very cute and sugary game all in all. And I quite liked it when I played it. Except, now that I have grown up somewhat, and I realize that, if you have a girl who really genuinely loves you, she wouldn't care as much about your weight as this apparently very strict Penko would, and, she dumps you because you're too fat. That's not cool. That's
shallow.
That is incredibly shallow. Yes, I mean I remember the Simpsons episode King Size Homer, where Homer deliberately tried to gain a lot more weight for workers' comp, and Marge admitted that she found herself less attracted to Homer from that. That was treated more seriously. This game treats the whole weight thing kind of jokingly, and maybe the tone's a little bit iffy nowadays, all things considered. I just think it's kind of teaching the wrong message, all things considered. I mean, me, myself, honestly, being quite a fat guy, still trying to get under 300 pounds, haven't quite reached it yet. Maybe I'm not trying hard enough. I feel Penta shouldn't if he wants to lose weight just for his own health. That's all good and all, but trying to lose it to win back your somewhat ex-girlfriend, I don't know, man. I'm not sure that's the priority you should be setting for yourself. It seems, I don't know. This game's just sending some mixed messages. I find the premise simultaneously cute and harsh, maybe a little disingenuous. I don't know. I know that Japan doesn't have the greatest view of obese people outside of the sumo rings, so I don't know. This game's hard to look at, me myself having grappled with overweightness for much of my life, so
there's a possibility of reading too much into it too.
I think I'm making this too real. Yeah, sorry.
I do think that I don't think that the premise has really aged well. I can agree.
Yeah.
Like, it's a little off-putting, today. Like, it brings to mind this other game. It's a homebrew that's folks have maybe heard about because it was kind of released recently. Amazon's Running Diet.
Related to God of
yeah.
That's
right,
that's
which is sort of a similar thing. Like, you're running through the stage and you have to avoid the sweet things, and it makes when you die, when you lose, you get so fat that you break the earth in half. Like, it's you look at it, you're like, like, the gameplay is fine, like, it's fun, but it's just like the tone, the theme is just like, I'm not sure I'm really into that.
I summed it up if I may, I summed it up like this quite some time ago. It's like, well, what's the moral of this story? Thin is in, women are shallow and are only interested in looks, fat penguins aren't as attractive as not-so-fat ones, bulimia is cool.
Jesus.
Although,
I'm not sure if she's a worse girlfriend or the one from Mappy Land.
I don't think I've ever played Mappy Land. So
not a Konami game, but you have to collect 8 things to convince her to go out with you. Then you have to collect 8 rings to get her to marry you, and then you have to collect 8 Christmas trees. Like, there's all this stuff where it's like you have to collect things to win the love of your family. Like, and I wrestle with that. And then you go to the Mappy Kids game, which is again, this is a tangent. Mappy Kids, it's like 2 brothers competing for, I think, 1 girl. And whichever one of them earns more money by the end of the game wins her and gets to marry her. Like, the Mappy games are really screwed up.
When Mappy Land was first released in Japan, it was 1986, and obviously he wasn't running Japan, but this was during Reagan's America, so maybe they were just really inspired by materialism and consumerism when they made this game. I don't know. That's fucked.
I will say, as far as Penko from Yume Penguin's concerned, if nothing else, and this is a bit of a minor spoiler here, she's a giant hypocrite.
That's right. I remember what happens at the end. I'm like, now the shoe's on the other foot. What if I want to dump you? Or what if I don't dump you and I look like the better man? You feel horrible about it, huh? Ever think of that?
Mm-hmm.
That should be that should have been the New Game Plus.
The New Game Plus size. That's terrible. I'm just gonna.
Well, that's okay, Mike. I don't know if you caught the whole huge hypocrite part of what I just said.
If you're not, what's?
You know what the operative word is here? She's a huge hypocrite.
Oh, a hypocrite. Oh.
No, I wasn't actually making that pun.
No, I'm just kidding about
that. I'm not picking up to what you're saying.
The operative word is huge. Huge.
Huge. That's the operative word.
Okay. I'm sorry. My attention's flagging a bit. Jiminy Cricket. My awkwardness is maybe a result of my fatness. I don't know. or vice versa. There's nothing wrong with being plumper than usual, unless it kind of cuts into your health. And, my whole diabetic episode a year and a half ago, I have been trying to watch my weight better. At least I'm taking walks every day, but...
and laying off the candy apples, right?
Yeah. haven't had one in some time.
And no more swimming in the sugar water.
Nope.
Unfortunately, I can't swim, so I even tried. I can't even tread water very well.
Oh, are you a Belmont by any chance?
It's possible. I don't feel as badass as one. I think I'd probably, get a scar on my face if I used a whip like Indiana Jones. But I don't know how this became about me. I made this about me. I'm sorry. We're way off topic. I think we should move on. Jeez. Unless you guys have anything to say about Yume Penguin Monogatari.
Jose? Eugene?
Well, no, I played a little bit of it. I did actually wrestle with whether or not I wanted to own it because I was like, I don't know if I really want to play this game. Yeah. But it's fine. It's I got it for an okay price, and it's super cute. Like it is. Yeah. It is charming.
Despite its awful premise, I do find it adorable, and I find the gameplay inherently innovative. So tit for tat, as it were.
Me, I like the game. I think it's funny and it's fun to play. And believe me, I'm about in the same boat as Mike when it comes to weight here. So,
yeah.
I mean that's
if we want to move things along, since you mentioned Indiana Jones, I kind of want to tag Jose and see if he'll talk about Automata no Kaseki.
I'd be up for that. I'd want to mention one more thing. Mm-hmm. I remember before we learned his name as Ginji, Rob referred to the evil penguin as Pimpy, and I'll never let him live that down because I think it's hilarious.
I freely admit to it too. I had no idea what this guy's name was.
But it's good. It's
good. Just to finish my thought, yeah, it's like, okay, I have my weight issues as well, but the game doesn't really bother me. So, that said, yes, Indiana Jones, and we should definitely turn this one over to Jose.
Oh yeah. So this is actually my favorite Famicom Disk System. My favorite Famicom Disk System game. Sorry.
I think it's mine too. I honestly can't think of any that were exclusive for the FDS that's any better.
I know it's mine too. So.
Yes.
Yes. Awesome. At first I found the grappling mechanic really awkward until I found out that you can actually jump as the hook is launching, so you can actually you can latch on to things that you wouldn't think that you can. I guess that's the best way to put it. If you can get over the fact that the post that the grapple line, I guess I'll call it, as long as you can get over the fact that the post that the grapple line is attached to is hovering in midair, it plays just fine, and you don't have to let that visual flaw affect the way you play the game. To me, it's very much an Indiana Jones meets Bionic Commando situation.
That's not a bad way of putting it.
Yeah, it's really good. The enemies are colored dependent on whether you can farm for items off of them or not, because some of them are colored one, so it's a waste of time to kill them, whereas others are going to give you a specific item pickup. I struggled a lot during my first playthrough, so much that I barely got anywhere on my first stream of the game. And then I gave myself the week to just learn how the game actually worked by just kind of experimenting with it. And then on my second stream of the game, I just blazed through it. I completed it without using any continues. I did use lives, but I didn't use any continues. And I was even able to manipulate the grapple hook to phase through walls and things like that, which I used to access one particular one-up in one of the stages. I don't know if there's any other way to get it, but it's on the other side of a wall, and you're actually supposed to grapple through it to reach it, and then the level kind of wraps around in a circle. It's kind of hard to explain, but the music's really good. What else can I say about the game, really?
Well, I know I can say this. It's definitely Konami's Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom.
Yeah. Yeah. And the bosses are really cool, too. I know the last couple... I want to say, the last stage. I think it's the last stage that's the most cryptic, but up until then, the game's pretty straightforward.
And there's a little bit of this game represented in our background as well. It's just very hard to see right now.
Oh yeah, on the far left there, behind the text chat. Yeah, I think that's the final boss, if I remember correctly.
I apologize to spoil it, but it's just such a fucking cool looking final boss. I
Oh yeah,
somewhere.
definitely. And the projectiles, all the different kinds of attacks you get, they aim in different angles and such, and short of a few, like one or two, they all have their uses, they all have their purpose. You know, I know the bombs let you destroy certain floors that you're actually intended to go down into to, you know, go deeper into some of the levels. Yeah, if you have a disc system and you don't own this game, then you're doing yourself a great injustice. You need to own this game.
Agreed completely. Now, there's a couple things I want to add about it. One was that the Famicom disc system, if you buy the complete disc, it actually comes with a collector's card. And it's one of the few, it's like a phone card in Japan, or something along those lines. It's one of the few that actually has multiple cards. It's like, I think my copy came with one where the hero is facing down a bunch of scorpions.
Mm-hmm. And Castlevania 2, I think, had varied cards as well.
It did. Yeah.
You didn't, you're sure? Castlevania 2?
No, it did.
Oh, it did.
Yep.
Yes.
And let's see. That was a cool little extra to throw in with that. Mm-hmm. Another thing is this goes back to when I bought Gradius 2 at that little game store. I did get a Konami catalog that dated back to that time, and this game was in there, but I can't read Japanese. I just thought it would look like an illustration of an Indiana Jones character, and it's like, wait, did Konami do an Indiana Jones game in Japan? I have to find this game. And it took me years to actually find out what it was and what the deal was with it. But I'm glad I did finally. It's just such a cool game.
This game whips. And I don't mean... Okay, pun not intended. Maybe pun's intended. I don't know. This game's fucking awesome.
Sounded very intentional.
Yeah. I don't think there's any way that wasn't intentional.
Exactly.
I think my subconscious was nudging it towards it.
You can't say pun not intended when you want to back out of the pun you just made and don't want people to come down on you.
All right, well, believe what you will in that case. But, no, yeah, they're just... I know the term hidden gem is kind of eye-rolling and cliche nowadays, but I don't know how to describe this game because I still don't hear a lot of people talking about it, probably because the FDS is still, I think, slightly... Like, enough is known about it, but just doesn't seem discussed enough among most people I see nowadays, and I really can't think of too many other exclusives really worth playing on the thing. If you gave me a list, I could probably identify a few, but this is the go-to game that always comes to mind when I think about why an FDS would have been worth owning. It's just so flippin' cool. Overall, 6 levels and, you know, stages that they have a bit of exploration in them, but, like, you know well enough where to go. With enough practice. You get 6 different weapons in fair quantity, like daggers, bombs, pistols, these spiky balls and whatnot, and so forth. There's some unique bosses in there, like you fight some sort of sea serpent on a raft, even with a slightly different control physics than the normal stages as well, like these giant skull pillars and whatever. There's just a lot of really neat imagery. Like it really sells the whole. You know, you're going through these ancient ruins settings or whatever. Like this really is the greatest Indiana Jones game on the NES with the serial numbers filed off. Like ironically, I don't think you use any sort of whip, which, you know, double ironic considering, you know, it's fucking Konami. Your protagonist, who I honestly don't remember, or like you think he'd be like a Belmont descendant or whatever. Now I'm curious. I gotta look that up.
What did you say it was, Jose?
Kaito. Just yes. Kaito, I think is his name.
Kaito. Okay. Oh, okay. Gotcha. like, yeah, it's just a really cool blend of unique action and aesthetic that I really dig. And it is that grapple line that is really what makes it unique. Like, yeah, like as mentioned, the bionic arm and bionic commando is what made that weak. I mean, unique. I mean, you can jump in addition to firing that, and that is in fact required. I think in some areas. Now, definitely, as mentioned, the use of the line takes some practice to actually really get down pat, and it might be daunting at first for people who are just new to the game to wonder just how the hell they exactly use it. It's definitely something that requires a bit of practice, but you know, it's not as complicated as like learning how to drift in like Daytona USA, which I still haven't fucking done. I've never even beaten the easy course in that game, but I digress.
Regarding the struggle of use for the you know, getting to used to the grappling mechanic, it was really funny is when I got really into the game, I actually considered making a really short, simple video and uploading it on YouTube on, okay, like this is how you properly use the grappling hook, just so I can help everybody else out. But then, you know, but then I realized that no one's gonna watch it because nobody knows about the game anyway. So,
okay, make a video bringing attention to the game first, then make that instructional video.
There you go.
That's my recommendation. Because more people need to know about Almana no Kiseki. I barely see it mentioned anywhere, despite people knowing that it exists. They just don't give it a second look because I guess the FDS is kind of a pain to operate, and you know, emulators can do the disc flipping thing easy enough. It's not that bad. It's very worth looking into for a game that I really feel doesn't get enough love. It's really one of the best Konami action games that I know of, and really more people really do have to play it. And I also wanted to note that the grapple mechanic, I think, might have been inspired by the 1983 Konami arcade game Rockin' Rope.
Yeah, in a way, it's almost like an evolution of it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there you couldn't jump and fire the grapple lines. The lines were your way of advancing upward, but yeah, Rockin' Rope's a neat little game. I actually even finally got to play a real cabinet of it just last week, amazingly enough.
That's cool. Wow.
Yeah, I just, like, you know, an arcade nowadays is semi-rare enough as it is, but they had a fucking rocking machine there? Holy, I had to play it.
Surprising.
Makes me think of the time
I've seen a couple of people stream Automata no Kiseki, but that's just the circles I'm in, and one of them is Jose, Omega Ace Gaming, and the other was someone who's since migrated over to Twitch, but the Renaissance streamed the game as well. And I think everyone struggles with that grapple mechanic.
Yeah.
I've played a little bit of it, but again, like that one, it's been filed as one of those games I want to stream and play later on. So I haven't spent a lot of time with it. And plus, I think I've kind of held it at arm's distance a little bit because I know I'm going to struggle with some of the mechanics myself.
Well, it's definitely worth learning.
Yeah, you'll get used to it. It's once you become accustomed to it, it's second nature.
And on an unrelated side note, but related to what Mike was talking about, you're finding Rockin' Rope like that. It just reminds me of that one time I walked into a bike shop of all places, and they had an arcade game in there, and it was a Konami game, which actually did make it to the Famicom, but not under. It wasn't released by Konami. That was Circus Charlie.
Oh, cool.
I think Konami actually did the programming on that one, but somebody else distributed it over in Japan. Kind of like what happened with, what was that one game? Puyon.
Oh, hey. The pig game.
Yeah, the three little pigs that are packing some serious heat.
That's a Konami game?
That is.
Huh.
Yeah, it sure is.
Yep, Hudson released it in Japan for whatever reason. But yeah, that's the only two I think that Konami didn't publish themselves, but they're definitely both Konami games.
Yeah. Funny enough, it was on that same DS compilation I mentioned earlier, the Puyon game.
Yeah, that was one that I actually remember first stumbling across that on the Atari 2600. And then much later on, that was released by Konami. They actually had done like 4 games of the 2600 under their own name. Much later on, there was a PlayStation compilation released, Konami Arcade Classics.
Yeah.
And Puyama's on there, Rock and Rope, Circus Charlie, Time Pilot, Gyrus. It was a solid little set.
Yeah, the only one I thought was mid was Road Fighter. Otherwise, they're all great games.
Yeah, which brings us to another game we could talk about. Road Fighter.
Really?
That is a game.
The Famicom version is actually better than the arcade game, believe it or not.
I remember you mentioning this. I'm not sure I really got around to much of it, though.
It's a very, primitive, for lack of a better word, racing game.
Mm.
And it's just very simple. Just make it to the checkpoint before you run out of gas. And don't let the cars slam into the side of the road and blow you up, because this isn't like Spy Hunter. You will die and lose time instead of just respawning.
Dang.
But you have no offensive weaponry. You just have to rely on your dodging skills. And every so often, Konami Man will fly by and distract you.
Yes. Yes.
Jerk.
Not a lot of fighting in Road Fighter.
No, virtually none.
That's kind of false advertising there.
Yeah, it's more like Road Racer.
Yes. Road Racer, the Speed Racer's lamer cousin.
Exactly. Yeah, that one actually got another release in Europe as well, believe it or not.
Cool.
So I've only played. So if it was released in Europe, then was it actually a Famicom exclusive?
It kind of was. I'm only talking about games that never made it here to the U.S.
Oh, so games that did make it to Japan and Europe, but not over here, are fair game?
I was thinking about Crack Out as well after I played that. So Road Fighter, I only made it through the first area. Does it get more complex than what it shows in that first stage? Are there more different like colored cars and variations, or because it seemed to me that there were like straightforward like cars that just kind of go in a straight line, and then there's like the red cars which tend to go to the right when you try to pass them, and then there's the blue ones that tend to go to the left when you try to pass them, although sometimes they do other directions, and then the rainbow cars that give you some extra health, like is there or gas. Does it get more complex than that?
Well, there's a semi truck that shows up.
Oh, the semi. I think I ran into one of those at the end of the stage, didn't I? Yeah.
Yeah, it's
like literally ran into it and died.
Yeah, it's instant death right there.
Yep. I thought I had to drive up into the back of it like a Knight Rider. I thought that was the end of the stage because it was right by the checkpoint. I was like, oh, that's where I'm going. Nope. You smash into the back of it, you're dead.
Yep.
You fool!
I haven't played into it in a long time. I just recall that basically your timer gets shorter. And it gets a little more challenging because the cars get tougher to maneuver around. But other than that, there's not any real enemy variety.
Okay. So you probably have to get good enough so that you can actually, because you can accelerate. There's like two speeds. There's like a maximum speed you can go, but it's harder to steer and dodge things when you're going that fast. But you probably need to do that in order to get to the checkpoint. But then I also wonder if that burns more fuel. I didn't really investigate that.
Yeah, it's something I don't recall off the top of my head. But speaking of games that were also released in Europe, besides Road Fighter and Crack Out, there was also Parodius.
All right.
So
that's a fun game.
Yeah, there was also Konami published a game over there, which was made by somebody else. It was Noah's Ark.
Oh yeah, I vaguely remember that one. I definitely didn't play it too much.
Yeah.
So Konami's European games were Palcom, right?
Right.
Yeah. That's confusing.
Very. But I'd say I was kind of jealous they got Parodius and we didn't, but I have problems with the Famicom Parodius as it is.
That's fair.
Certain issues with it.
Before I move too far in that direction, I want to ask, why is the NES Famicom Road Fighter better than the arcade one?
It seems more fair.
You know, that's a good reason. That's why I like the NES Contra more than the arcade Contra. So,
well, the NES arcade, the NES Contra is actually a good game.
That too, yes.
Exactly. All right. So that said, anyone else have anything to add about Road Fighter at all?
No, like I said, I played a little bit of it. It seems like something that might be nice to play for a few minutes here and there. Or I don't know. I assume you can beat it. I assume it has an ending, or does it just keep getting harder and harder?
I believe it does actually have an ending.
So it might be something I would revisit. I think it's really just a matter of getting the hang of the controls and sort of getting a feel for how to evade the other cars.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. How about you, Jose?
For me, it's really just a footnote in Konami's history. I don't really think it's worth,
I can't argue with that at all. So let's just go ahead and move on.
So we all agree that it's still mid-fighter.
It's a game, all right.
All right, Eugene, you have another one in mind?
Let's see. So one I'll just open the conversation on, because I know I don't have the most experience with this game, but we did mention Upa earlier on the stream, so we have to come back to
Yes.
Yes.
Please do.
And so I had been wanting to play it for the longest time, and then I finally did play at least through, I think, maybe half of the game about a year and a half ago when my daughter was born, as sort of my way of announcing, like, hey, we've got a baby coming. That's probably going to affect my streaming schedule a little bit, but it's fun. It's such a I know people. It's been kind of like released as like Mario Baby or something, so some people might have encountered like a ROM hack of it or like some bootleg version of it over time. But it's a cute little game that is deceptively difficult. Like, it looks like a kid game,
yes,
but it's really hard. Although with like Unlimited Continues, it's just a matter of like sitting down and playing through it, which I haven't done yet. I think you can also, is there a password or a save? No, you can't do that, but you can do Unlimited Continues. But you're a baby with a rattle, and sometimes you get a power up that lets you like walk and makes you invincible. You can hit enemies and turn them into like platforms or projectiles. It takes a little bit of getting used to the mechanics. You're a hardy little baby, but some of the fights take a little while to figure. Like the boss fights take a little while to figure out how to like attack them the best. Because when you send an enemy flying off, like they ricochet around the screen, and you kind of have to play pool a little bit with the enemies and figure out where they're going to hit the boss. Great music, great graphics. I can't say anything really bad about it, except that it's expensive.
Yeah, it is. How about you, Jose?
I beat that game for the first time just last year. Really fun, really good game. I played it on the disc system. My first experience with it was actually on the Nintendo's. What did they call it back then? It was on the Wii, the virtual
console. Yeah.
Console. There you go. Yeah, so that was my first time playing it. I think that game sold for $6 digital on there. So I purchased it on there. I played through it. I got pretty far, but I hadn't beaten it until just last year. So it's the difficulty is not too bad. It does pick up towards the end. You're gonna die a few times unless you're experienced with the game. I think he looks super adorable when he's swimming and he has the little goggles on.
Yeah,
it's great.
Yeah.
It's a great game though. I think Eugene covered it pretty well. It's one of my favorites. It's unfortunately one I don't own yet. It's not absurdly expensive. If you pick it up on the disc system, it's somewhere in the neighborhood of like, let's say 100-ish. Whereas the cartridge version, I think, is even more. I believe there is a difference in the soundtracks, not necessarily the songs being different, but just the way the disc system chooses to play the. Well, you know what I'm saying. Like the disc system version of the game sometimes have slightly different sound to the soundtrack. So
the disc system, I think, actually has extra sound channels. And,
okay.
Upa's one of the games that uses them.
Yeah. So really, if you're willing to live with the load times, then I would argue that the disc system version is the better way to go, and it's also the more affordable way to go.
Mm-hmm. Now, fun fact about that is that it's actually one of the 3 disc system games that got released on a cartridge, or re-released, I should say.
Mm-hmm.
It's like that, the original Castlevania, and Moro Twinbee, which we got over here, Stinger.
That's right.
Oh, you're talking only Konami,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah, Nintendo re-released a couple too. I think I know Zelda was one of them. But Konami just did the 3.
There you go.
So, and most of those are pretty highly priced. Like, they don't even look for a cartridge version of Akumajo Dracula. It's just stupidly priced.
It's like about 500 last I checked, something like that.
Like I said, stupidly priced.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is a good game. Mike, what do you think?
I love Upa. Game's tops. It's just got a lot of layers working for it. It's very colorful platformer with a very innovative method of attack. You bonk enemies with a rattle, and then they inflate into platforms. And then when you deal with the bosses, you have to bump those enemies that you just platformed into them, which can be quite tricky to manage. But I know I have beaten this one. I think even twice over, so... It definitely takes some finagling to get used to the physics, but, you get used enough to anything, and stages do steadily increase in difficulty and amount of stuff that they throw at you. Like, you got your ice levels, there are these cavey levels full of spikes. Favorite level that I remember is one that looked like it took place within a computer, and it's like everything's all microchip looking. And there are all these Konami logos everywhere. Like, my headcanon spins that this is the inside of an MSX computer, if I had to guess. And one of those levels also took place upside down, like, a certain section, the last level of Castlevania Bloodlines is what it reminds me of. And yeah, you even have to fight the boss like that. Most of the bosses you fight are these pigs with these large snouts, but you face them in increasingly different platforming situations, like this one I'm seeing that you fight in a pair of conveyor belts. And then you occasionally have these more unique bosses, like this giant seahorse, or... I remember the final boss is this somewhat mean-looking, like, wizard goat man, which I guess is a bit of a spoiler, but sorry about that. And also, I believe you can collect a milk bottle, which makes Upa invincible and has him get up from his crawl and just happily run into enemies, which is such a great little sprite.
Yeah, it's playing a Johnny Little tune, too.
Yeah, just mowing everyone over. Game's colorful, innovative, never boring. It's tops. I fucking love it. And I also love that Upa was not only in YY World 2, but he was even in... I know at least Jikyo Oshiberry Parodius. I think he was also in the SNES the Super Famicom version of a Gokujo Parodius that added a few characters to it.
Yep,
So, he I don't think he ever got another game that wasn't a crossover, but, Biomiracle Bokate Upa, definitely, even if it is only just the one game, it's one definitely worth playing.
Mm-hmm.
Fun fact, it may be a fact, it may not be. I remember reading this in EGM way back when. Apparently, Nintendo of America's reason for not releasing it over here was because it wasn't good enough for the American market.
Fuck you. What was good enough?
Apparently 8 Eyes.
Fuck you! God damn it. Fuck 8 Eyes. I'm sorry.
8 Eyes, Back to the Future. Think of every bad NES game you've ever played. Those were all apparently good enough for the American market. But Upa was not.
You remember that Mystery Science Theater 3000 bit where they watched Laser Blast and they groaned at Leonard Maltin, rating it a surprisingly high 2.5 stars. And then they just raffled off all the actually classic movies that he rated Laser Blast higher than. Do you remember that bit?
I think I do, actually.
It's probably been some time, but it's like, he liked Laser Blast more than Blade Runner. He liked it more than Aliens, or something like that. And,
that's wow. And yes, Prime apparently Uncanny X-Men was good enough for the NES, but Upa was not.
Well, so it's interesting though. We haven't really talked about it because I guess most people know this, but how Nintendo had like a limit, I guess, on the number of games that publishers could release in North America, right? Like so Konami had Ultra to kind of release more of their games under another imprint. So I wonder though, like if they actually put forth Upa as a game that they wanted to release, and then Nintendo said no. So then what game did we get instead, right? As opposed to because we've already covered like a bunch of games we didn't get. Some of them they didn't come over, I'm assuming, because they were too Japanese. Some of them were too esoteric because of like how Konami they are. But then some of them, like, why didn't that come over here? Was it just they had all these other games that they wanted to come over, and they just didn't have enough slots for them?
Yeah.
I don't know. There are just a few gaps in what should be right. I don't know. I call it a quote-unquote fluke of the universe when something that really should be isn't, or something that really shouldn't be is. Like Jared Leto continuing to fucking get work in Hollywood, for example. That's a fluke of the fucking universe, and I hate that fucking icy-eyed bastard. I digress.
What we need is, and I don't know if Konami will ever get there because they've been doing a lot of their reissues with some of their games. They had the arcade archives and or not the arcade archives, the arcade anniversary collection and the Castlevania anniversary collections. Namco did their museum archives, which was like about 20 games. There's two sets of mostly their Famicom games, and so we got a lot of games that never were ported over to the US back in the day. And if Konami did that, like most of the games on this list would be great to have in a collection like that, with a translation or without one.
Oh, absolutely.
To have that come over and hit like a broader audience, or heck, put these things on the Switch Online.
Yeah,
they've got avenues with which they can send these out, and instead we're getting, not that this is a bad game, but like limited run, we're getting Felix the Cat, which I think is a fun game, but it's like a Hudson Soft game, which is now under Konami. But like, why did they choose that out of all the games that they could be releasing?
Didn't they also release Bill and Ted's Excellent Video Game Adventure as well?
Yeah, no one got why the fuck they did that. I'm still
that seems to me like a contractual obligation on some level. Like that there are some games that it's like they must have been forced to release this for whatever reason. That, like A Boy and His Blob, they've got this Jurassic Park collection. There's got to be some kind of weird deal somewhere where it's like, we'll give you this, but you have to do this too.
Yeah.
I don't get it.
Makes sense.
Business. That's all I got.
And Boy and His Blob isn't even that bad of a game, but
I have an odd affinity for it. I grew up playing it. I don't think I ever beat it fairly, but it's
well, it's an odd choice only in that. So, like, okay, something like Felix. Like, this is a way digression. Something like Felix the Cat, where the cartridge is on like the pricier side of things, if you wanted to play it like the legitimate way. But you got Boy and His Blob. You can buy that any day for like $5 or $8 or whatever. Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure is still pretty cheap too, although not as cheap as it probably would be. Some of these games, it's just like, I'm not sure why you decided to release a special like cartridge reissue of this plus a digital collection of this game that isn't even very well loved. I don't get it. It's like the fact that they've been doing some of the Natsume games is a different story. Like, a lot of those games are harder to get. They're a little bit more expensive. I don't know. I'm not sure what's happening. It's strange. It's strange. So I just choose to not buy them.
I know this isn't exactly the same thing, but it's like when, like, more than once someone got the inkling to revive Bubsy for some reason. And, like...
Oh, I'm just not going to say anything, because I know Sharon's listening.
You know what? I'm just going to leave it at that, too. I don't know where I could really go from there. I still have an odd affinity for Bubsy. Very odd, but, yeah, it's
I can't explain it. I have a very small Super NES collection, cartridge collection, and I can't explain it. I do not know why I have this, but for some reason I have a CIB copy of Bubsy, like the first Bubsy game. I don't know why. It must have been cheap, or I don't know where it came from. I've never played it. I should play it, I guess. I don't know.
I like the first Bubsy, but it never should have became a series. That's my opinion.
What could possibly go wrong?
Wheels of Doom.
I did watch the cartoon, that one cartoon that they made back in the day. I think I still have it on VHS somewhere.
Oh no!
Oh, wow, I didn't know they made a cartoon.
Oh yeah, it's probably on YouTube by now. They made a cartoon of that. They made a cartoon of Battletoads.
Earthworm Jim.
That was at least had a full series. These were like special, like Battletoads. I think was like a Thanksgiving special or something.
Yeah, the Earthworm Jim one is actually quite good. I'm pretty sure Bubsy was a pilot that nobody picked up because it was terrible. Bubsy is just really fucking mean-spirited in it. I forget if I even ever saw the full thing, but I just remember like no one really liked it all that much. So.
A lot of those cartoon cats were pretty messed up. I rewatched Heathcliff not that long ago, and I was like, wow, he is a complete jerk. Like, I know it kind of says that in the theme song, but it's way worse than I remembered it.
Oh,
the only nice cartoon cat was Eek.
Yeah, Eek had stuff happen to him. He didn't really incur anything on anyone else, as I remember.
God, it's been ages since I thought of Eek the cat.
I had a bad SNES.
Never hurts to help. Except it really does. Sorry, Eek.
Poor guy.
Yeah. Anyway, we're coming up on midnight Eastern time here, so
dang.
I think we've discussed most of the great ones that never made it out over here. Have we skipped anything really of anything noteworthy?
I guess Twinbee, but that's about it.
Yeah, well, there's Twinbee, and then there's Twinbee 3.
Right.
I wish it was called Twin 3, but that makes it sound like some sort of bad Taiwanese pirate game, so maybe not.
Yeah.
Or some kind of porno. I don't...
Goddamn. I know there are a couple, like, I want to say there were more, like, RPG-ish games by the name of I Senshi Nickel and Esper Dream, but I never really played these ones, so I don't have anything to say about them.
I Senshi Nickel seems to be less RPG-ish and more Blaster Mastery.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
Dungeon exploring game. We keep wanting Jose to stream it, but it keeps getting outvoted on.
Yeah, it keeps getting outvoted.
I keep voting for it, Jose. I keep voting for it. It looks like it's a project. As I say, I played a little bit of it for the first time finally, and it definitely feels like Blaster Master, but with better controls and better firing. It looks promising. It also looks pretty obtuse.
Right.
Yeah, it does look pretty neat. It's just one I have to dive into. Esper Dream is much more RPG. It's an action RPG. Yeah. I mean, it plays like Zelda, but that's where the similarities end. It does. Oh, what's a game that feels more like maybe more like Crystalis sort of ish, but maybe I don't know. These are games I wish I had more to say about, but I unfortunately don't know much. I just wanted to touch on the edge of them.
Now Bruno bought Moai-kun.
Oh yeah, Moai-kun, a puzzle platformer, which is also one I haven't played nearly enough, but I remember I liked what I did play of it.
Yeah, I played through the first several stages of it, and it's very cute. Like it's a little Moai statue running around, and it's like a block pushing puzzle game. It feels very black box, like classic arcade style. I think the sides of the screen wrap, like one of those things. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I haven't put enough time into it, but it's fun when I played of it so far.
Mm-hmm.
It is a neat little game, just like Quarth.
And Quarth, I picked up recently. That is I don't think I know how to play it yet, but it's sort of like you're sort of like a ship. It's like a shooter, but you're firing Tetris blocks, and you have to make. I guess you have to make lines or something at the top there. So I haven't gotten very far in it because I was like, I'm not sure I know how to play this yet, but it's very intriguing.
You basically have to take the Tetris blocks you're shooting and kind of fill in the gaps of the blocks that are coming, so you make squares or rectangles.
Ah, right.
All right.
And it did come out for the Game Boy over here, though. And I think it was released in arcades over here as well.
I believe the arcade version in some localities was given the terribly punny name of Block Hole.
It was.
If that sounds familiar. That's one I didn't come up with for once. That's actually what it's called.
Yeah, it actually is called Block Hole.
Not making this up disclaimer.
But yeah, there's definitely a lot we could go into further, but I really think we should probably call it a night.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good.
It's getting near midnight, man.
We covered everything worth mentioning. I think we did a good job.
Yeah, I think so. We definitely talked quite a bit and had a few diversions there, but
Yeah.
damn it! I actually forgot to mention any of the Goemon games for too late. Never mind.
Yeah, too late. But it was fun. So
Yeah. Thanks for bringing us together for this conversation.
yeah, no problem. And thanks to everyone who came into the chat, stuck around, threw in their 2 cents. It's much obliged.
Always is.
So, that said, a couple updates for the future. The Ninja Gaiden stream is going to be happening.
At long last.
Yes. And providing something else happens, which hopefully it won't, it should go off this coming Saturday, 9 o'clock.
Awesome.
All right.
So we'll be discussing all the classic games, starting with the original arcade game, going all the way up through... What was the last one we were going to talk about?
The Ninja Gaiden trilogy? Is there one after that?
There might have been. I know there was that unreleased one for the Genesis. But
The Game Gear title?
that's definitely in there, but that came out a lot earlier. I do know we're going to cut it short before we get to the Xbox games and the reboot of the series.
Yeah. Chronologically, it seems that the last Ninja Gaiden release before the classic series stopped was the Master System title in '92, if I'm reading this right.
There you go.
92.
Yeah.
Amazingly so for the Master System of all things.
Mm-hmm.
I know it got a huge lifespan in South America, but but this game wasn't Brazilian exclusive or whatever. So, I don't know. Fascinating little console.
And for anyone who's wondering about the books, I did actually get an update today.
Oh, cool.
My publisher has all the artwork files now and is getting ready to go ahead and basically... how did he put it to me? He's working on, something for the hard copies right now with those. So there should be news coming hopefully sooner than later.
Nice.
So as far as when it'll be available for sale and so on and so forth. Or all 4 of them. So if you like video game stories, then you'll probably find a lot to like about Memoirs of a Virtual Caveman and Digital Archaeology, which actually has stories that are contributed not only by Mike, but also by Eugene.
Yo.
Oh, nice.
Mm-hmm. And if you want to learn more about basically the era of the message board, that's where Tales from the Third Moon comes into play. And then you can learn more about me than you ever wanted to know by reading Eating Candy in Outer Space.
All right.
There's a lot of Splatterhouse content in the first 3, I can tell you that. But yes, you will be getting more about those soon. So, that said, thanks again, everybody. Thank you, Jose, Eugene, Mike, for being here. And
of course.
Thank you.
I hope you all have a good night.
Yeah. Take care, everyone.
Good night, everyone.
Bye-bye.